What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Recher podcast here on December 16th, 2024. I don't know about you guys out there, but I am feeling pretty damn good about myself because it is a victory Monday. Not only did the Buccaneers win, but of course, you see, I'm rocking the pearly whites today. Man United won the Manchester Derby yesterday over Man City, and we all know that Manchester is always red, so the Glazers are feeling pretty good because both of their teams won as well. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. I am everywhere. Like and subscribe on YouTube as well. A big show today, like every day. Of course, at 12:40, we'll chat with our guy, Braydon Coburn, former Tampa Bay Lightning defenseman, about the Red Hot Bolts and what he sees from the Blue Liners. Michael Kelly, Vice President of Athletics for your USF Bulls, joins the program as well, as we are, 8 days away. 8 days away from the Hawaii Bowl as USF travels there to the Big Island to take on San Jose State. We'll get into that. 1:20, our good buddy David Schiele will join us on the program to talk some Rays, talk some Bucs, and WWE Saturday Night Main Event. And then we'll finish the program off at 2 o'clock today. Greg Wolf, Street Laced. What's going on with him? What's going on with the crew over there? The Tampa Bay Sun with the victory over the weekend. So not many people are as tuned in to what's going on in the Tampa Bay area than one of the voices of the Bay Area, Greg Wolf. But we start our Monday like we do every Monday with the one and only Ian Beckles. Look at that. The freaking phone is right. It's horizontal. He's feeling good. What honeycombs? What is on the shirt there?
I thought it does look like honeycombs. It's Cookie Monster.
Oh, I like that.
So they're cookies. You see what I'm saying?
I like that. It looks good, man.
And no mention of the Tottenham Hotspurs at all. The whole time. I was just waiting.
Did you see what happened?
What happened?
They played at 2 o'clock. They had a triple header on Sunday. They scored 5 goals in the first.
Let's go.
Everybody was like, hey, man, if you want people to really like soccer, like the Manchester Derby wasn't great. Like Man U, they're not doing all that hot. Man City's been terrible. They've only won 1 game in their last 10, which is crazy because they've won the league 4 years in a row. They're in big trouble. But Tottenham comes out after that whole game like, oh, y'all are paying attention to that? Here's 5 in the first half of that ass. And of course,
that's what we do.
Your guy's son doing his thing, of course, 32 years young. If nobody knows, Ian picked up Tottenham Hotspur during the pandemic when we were kind of looking for soccer. And go, not right now, but when you guys get a chance, go check out the story of Heung-Min's son during the pandemic. This guy literally left Tottenham Hotspur to join the army. And then he was like the #1 sniper in the army. So one of the most talented guys that I don't think a lot of people know here in the Bay Area. Let's go. Shout out to everybody tune in. Jose Puro, Jeff Taylor, Chris Perdomo, Dave Terry, my man Jay Bird. How about them Bucks? Hammer, who's been tuning into everything that we do over the years. Fire those cannons. And then Jake Kobe and saying, what's up, fellas? Happy Victory Monday. Can I give Mike Muckaluckin Evans a shout out? Let's just start right there, Ian. You get Mike Evans involved early and often. It just seems like, and I know you want to focus on the run because I think that's one of the big adjustments that the Buccaneers made in the second half. Like, let's get back to running the football, right? But when you get Mike Evans involved early, he has the ability to make the big plays. And whenever Mike Evans makes big plays, it seems like the Buccaneers come out on top and win.
It seems crazy, but every time the Bucs win, Mike Evans is present, and it seems like if Mike Evans has an off game, the Bucs lose. So. Right. I think there's a correlation between that. Mike is our spiritual leader. Now that Chris went down, Mike is our best player and our spiritual leader. I think Chris Godwin might have been that earlier. But Mike Evans is he's one of those guys that, you know, being in sports radio as long as I have and talked about sports and the Buccaneers, I've been wrong a few times. I don't know if I haven't been wrong about Mike Evans a half dozen times, saying he can't still be the same player. And then he comes and then he does that. So everybody falls off except for Mike Evans. So maybe in 4 or 5 years he'll start falling off. But until then, I'm still a believer.
I want to give a shout out to a guy like Mark Sanchez because I thought he did a good job during the broadcast yesterday. He brought up something I thought it was like a perfect analogy. He said Mike Evans is the Buccaneers' Larry Fitzgerald. And I just looked at it and I was like, you know what, man? Larry Fitzgerald never fell off. He was just consistent. He stayed healthy. He was a great dude on and off the field. And I was just like, damn, man. Sometimes I think comparisons get a little lame and it's like too much of a stretch. I think that's a pretty damn good comparison between the two.
I think it's awesome. And when I was thinking about Mike Evans and his legacy, if I bring up any wide receiver in the history of the game and I say what's his strengths, I think he can spit it out right away. I'm not sure we can do it with Mike, because
Right.
if I say, do you think he's fast? I mean, he doesn't have the best separation. He's not
Mhm.
the best jumper. He's just a competitor. I don't know
Mhm.
what other way to say it. He figures out ways to get open when the ball's in the air. He catches the ball. He's just a competitor, and obviously he's a skillful cat. But I don't know if I've ever seen anybody get the most out of what they have. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, and it's like at times he has a case of the dropsies too, right? Like so you would never say like he has the greatest hands in the world, but he
Nope.
catches him when you need to catch him, and he's just a playmaker and a big part of that win. But yeah, I'm going to go back to the running game. It seemed like Liam Cohen was getting a little bit too pass happy there. And I just love the fact that Liam Cohen could check himself and be like, all right, let's get back to the run, whether it's Bucky, whether it's Rashad. And then, man, that really opened things up in the passing game. But I know that speaks volumes to you. And I know that makes you feel good when you see an OC go, let's get back to running the football.
Well, you know where I come from, Jay. I want to run the football all the time, and everybody keeps on talking about this is a pass-happy league, and you have to have this and you have to have that. When at the end of it, the teams that are succeeding are the teams that run the football. Okay, if you just throw the football, it doesn't work. And when you see some other teams out there, and listen, as Buccaneer fans, this is kind of new to us becoming a running football team. So I just don't know if we know how to deal with it. Okay, so we're everything is we want more Bucky, want more Bucky. When you're watching the Detroit Lions, the Detroit Lions have two legitimate running
Mhm.
backs. So do the Bucs.
Right.
So let's stop begging for one of them when they're both doing great things. Because your boy Rashad has done equally as well as Bucky in the grand scheme of things, okay? I don't see Bucky running across the formation to make great blocks, okay? I don't see Bucky making the same reads in the pass game. Bucky is a great open field runner. Rashad's a tougher in between the tackle runner. He's a better blocker. But we have two great running backs. Let's stop asking for one or the other, because at the end of the year, we're going to need both of them to be successful.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Rashad White still averaging over 4 yards a carry. I mean, that's what you want from your running backs. And to me, as much as I know what Bucky Irving can bring to the table and how dynamic he is, if there's a guy that I want to run between the tackles, if there's a guy like when the Bucs are up in that game yesterday in the fourth quarter and there's like 8 minutes left, I don't want the ball in Bucky's hands there. I want the ball in Rashad's hands there because he's a bigger dude. He's going to run between the tackles. Hell, I almost would want to see even more of a Sean Tucker in that situation because those guys can take the physical contact a little bit better than Bucky, who's dealt with 3 different injuries this year. Over the entire game, the ability to pop off the big runs, I understand that, but the ability to get the tough yards, I'm with you. Like Rashad White is a guy that you need him. You need guys like that. For all the talk about teams like Kansas City and throwing the football, the reason why the Chiefs have been good the last couple of years is when they need a yard, they get a yard, whether it's Pacheco or any of these other guys. They can run the football when they need to. And you look at the offensive line yesterday, I just think that line is just taking strides every single week, getting better and better and better. When you watch them, what's the biggest thing that sticks out to you about them? Is it the play? Is it the individuals? Like when you see that offensive line, I mean, because that you have to bring your hard hat and your lunch pail if you're going to go and beat a team like Jim Harbaugh's team, because if there's any coach in the league that understands building in the trenches, it's that guy.
Well, I mean, the Buccaneers have beaten the Harbaugh team. They've beaten the Lions. They've beaten the Eagles. Give me 3 better teams in the trenches. I don't
Right.
know if there are any. Okay, so this Buccaneer team is starting to get that personality, whether like they're going to run for 150, and I've been
Mm-hmm.
begging for that forever. When you have Rashad White, when you have Bucky, they get all the love. But this Buccaneer offensive line may be one of the better run blocking offensive line we've seen here in decades. So I want to give a lot of love to the offensive line. I want to give a lot of love to Liam Cohen for calling the run plays. And I'm going to tell you, and this is not just a particular to offensive line. All offensive lines want to run the football. Every one of them, 100%. They would rather run the ball 45 times than throw the ball 5 times. Okay, so this offensive line right now is feeling good about themselves, because those games we have to throw the ball 50 times, only bad things happen as an offensive line when you're running the ball 45 times, but I tell you what, you win the majority of those games. So I want to take my hat off to the offensive line because they're playing their asses off.
And we know the trenches are obviously on both sides. I thought defensively, pitching a shutout against Justin Herbert and that team, a big reason why was Todd Bowles was dialing up the pressure. And as much as I want to see more sacks from like a guy like Yaya Diaby, he was getting into the backfield. But, man, Kalijah Kancey and Vita Vea getting that pressure. I mean, Kalijah Kancey made a play on Ladd McConkey on 4th down. Think about that. A guy that's going to play in the middle of your defensive line made a play against the best receiver on the other team on 4th down to get a stop. The versatility of those guys on the defensive line have been absolutely huge. And even though you're probably not getting as much as you want from the outside, I mean, you win that battle in the middle and you start bringing the pressure like Todd did in the second half. I mean, man, that's going to be tough for any team to be able to handle.
Well, listen, everybody would love to have guys in the middle pushing the pocket and the guys from outside wreaking havoc. Not everybody has that, okay? We don't have the outside right now. Yaya is an up-and-down guy, hasn't had the best year rushing the passer, although I'm not going to say he's not playing well. I mean, guys like Shaq Barrett, we saw them go through, periods where they weren't getting sacks, but you see them out there playing hard. When Kalijah Kancey and Vita Vea are both healthy, I don't know if they're not one of the better, tandems in the whole league. They just haven't been that healthy too often. And, as a whole, this Buccaneer defense is starting to have a little swag to them, okay? It's, to me, they almost took it as a personal slight, going to the West Coast and playing against a great defense. They were like, well, let's show them what we can do. And Herbert wasn't 100%, but the Bucs sure put it on him. And the Bucs offensively put it on a defense that's been really kicking the crap out of everybody this year. So that was by far the most complete game I've seen the Bucs play this year.
Yeah, it's a great point because going into that game, the Chargers had the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL, giving up 15.9 points a game, and the Buccaneers put up a 40 stack on them. The one guy that stood out to me defensively yesterday, and I marvel at it still. This guy, Lavonte David, was absolutely everywhere. Who had the most tackles in the game yesterday for either team? Number 54, Lavonte David. He also had a sack and a half. He also hit the quarterback 3 times. He's 34 years old. And I said on Twitter yesterday, no, that's not 25-year-old Lavonte David. But, Ian, there's something poetic about that game yesterday where you could say that the 2 best players in that game for the Buccaneers in a very tough place to play because of the team, the style of football, were Lavonte David and Mike Evans. Like, that was a turn back the clock type game yesterday for the Bucs.
Well, Mike Evans and Lavonte David are very similar towards they're ageless. Mike Evans will have that drop once a game. I don't think he had one yesterday. Lavonte David, at times, you'll see him trailing because he's not the youngest guy in the world. There was a couple plays I'm like, oh, look at Lavonte, look. Then right after that, he gets a big sack and makes a big play. So you're always going to hear Lavonte David's name. If the Buccaneers are playing defensively, you're going to hear Lavonte David's name. That's just the way it goes. I hate when I hear people comparing him to Derek Brooks because I don't think anybody on that will linebacker should be compared to Derek Brooks. But even to be mentioned in the same breath as Derek Brooks, Lavonte has to be feeling pretty good about himself.
Yeah, and I wonder, somebody said it because it's tough because Lavonte doesn't have the Pro Bowls or the All-Pros to really make the Hall of Fame, but you start looking at the numbers that he has. I mean, his numbers, more tackles, more sacks, more INTs than guys like Luke Kuechly, and we know Bobby Wagner's probably going to get in there. He could be one of those senior ads, right? Maybe later on, like the Veterans Committee type of thing, because I don't know if he'll make it, but you can't say that there's been many more consistent linebackers in the game, in the last, 13, 14 years than Lavonte David.
Well, we know, Jay, the Pro Bowl a lot of times is a popularity contest. Mm-hmm. When you play on a lot of crappy teams, which Lavonte played, there's a lot of times where he probably deserved it and didn't get it. So, when it comes to the Hall of Fame, I think a lot of the Hall of Fame members would look at him and realize how great he was. But you still have to have that, those accolades. You still have to have, the lower tier. You have to have this many Pro Bowls, and there's exceptions here and there. But Lavonte David and Mike Evans, at the beginning of this year, if you said those are going to be 2 of our better players, I'd be like, that's getting a little old now. Like that, I don't know if that's still possible. But then that wasn't week 2. That was week 13 or 14, and we got our old ass players being the best out there. So I don't know how they keep on doing it, but they are.
Yeah, it's funny that the games that the Buccaneers win, you look at the teams that they beat early on in the season. When you go into Detroit and beat the Lions, you beat Philadelphia. I mean, Philadelphia wins again. They dominated the Steelers yesterday. And then the Lions lose to the Bills. The Lions, just so many injuries. McNeil, their defensive tackle, towards ACL, he's out for the year. Carlton Davis broke his jaw. He's out for 6 weeks. It just seems like all those good vibes from Detroit from last year. It's tough to like climb back up the mountain again. And I wanted to get your opinion on kind of where do the Bucs stack up in the NFC. One thing that I said before the season is watch out for San Francisco, because when you get close to the top of the mountain and you fall short again, it's awfully tough to climb back up. Steve Eisenman said that many years ago when the Lightning lost in the finals in 2015 to the Chicago Blackhawks. He looked at us and he goes, "You guys don't realize how tough it is to go the entire season, be one of the final 2 teams standing and lose." He's like, you don't want to work out. You don't want to practice. The regular seasons don't mean the same. He said, you could say anything you want to the media and you can try to convince yourself that, oh, it's going to be the same thing. It's hard to dust yourself off and to get back up there. San Francisco's done it now a couple times in the last 4 or 5 years. And you see this year, it's been an abomination and they're not close to the top of the map when it comes to the NFC. After that game and seeing Detroit lose at home to Buffalo, where do the Bucs fit in the NFC? Are they? I think they're probably behind Philadelphia, but I mean, probably not too far behind.
Well, Jay, human nature is to overreact to one game. That's just the way it is. Okay. A couple weeks ago, the Steelers are going to win and then lose a game, and all of a sudden the Steelers are something that they're not. I think I'm a realist. And when I look at things, when I look at this Buccaneer team, I would ask you, who's the best team in the NFC? Okay, the answer is going to be the Eagles. It's going to be the Lions, and the Bucs beat them both. Okay, right. Who's the best team in the NFL? The Chiefs, definitely. The Bucs had them on the ropes. The Bills, the Bucs haven't played them yet, but you can't tell me that the Bucs can't compete with these teams. I'm not telling you they're going to win the Super Bowl, but there's nobody out there that I go, well, there's no way the Bucs are going to beat that team. Like, on paper, San Francisco's a great football team, but on the football field, they're not that great anymore. So the Buccaneers right now, on paper, don't know if they're a great football team. But Todd Bowles, who I don't believe is getting enough love, is figuring out ways to win 4 straight games, and I don't care who they're against. And winning 4 straight games in the NFL is hard to do at any time. So I hear Todd Bowles' name to get fired a lot when he loses a couple games. I like to hear his name a little bit more, giving him some credit because he's doing a hell of a job.
Yeah, you think about it. You got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat. That's one part of being a good team. But also, you got to be able to go into tough places and win football games as well. I mean, you think about it. They had no Evans, no Chris Godwin. They took the Chiefs to overtime, right? And I know there's no consolations and there's no silver linings, but it also is a measuring stick. You kind of get an idea. Like, you didn't get blown out without the scarring of just losing your 2 best offensive weapons on the outside. And then you beat the Chargers, the Lions, and the Eagles. So, yeah, okay, they may be a little bit inconsistent, but what they've shown is they can rise the level of their competition to take on some of these great teams in the National Football League. Are you scared at all about going into the rest of this season or the rest of these games? Because now they go to Dallas, Sunday Night Football, and then they play the Panthers and the Saints.
Well, I don't do scared too much. The Buccaneers, like I said, I think they can fight anybody. But it's football, man. Because football is about matchups. Everybody wants to go to the last game. Look at that team. It's all about matchups. In the college playoffs going on, people are going to look at different teams, and if you lose in the first round, that doesn't mean you're not better than another team that wins, because matchups are funny sometimes. The Buccaneers went to Detroit and beat Detroit in their house, and then they'll lay an egg against a lesser team. So football's funny, man. Football, sometimes we have a key player have some situations at home, and all of a sudden the aesthetics of the whole team changes. A team like the Raiders, okay, you lose Max Crosby, you're a different football team. And there's so many teams, you lose a player like Daniel Jones as a Giants fan. You see what it does to it. Actually, that's a bad example.
Yeah, bad example. They're terrible.
It's just a terrible example.
They're terrible at all. I'm actually. They just called me. I got to go. I'm starting.
Yeah, well, you could probably play quarterback there better than Daniel Jones can. But for the Buccaneers to lose a Chris Godwin, okay, an Antoine Winfield Jr., and still be what they are right now, once again, Todd Bowles get my love.
Before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, I don't think we talked about this last week, ironically enough. It was Devondre Campbell leaving in the middle of the game. Did we talk about that last week? I don't think we did.
Nope.
I mean, it's such a tough game to play, and you need to have such a, warrior mindset. This is a guy that's been around the league. We saw him playing for the Falcons. I thought he did a decent job with Green Bay and played pretty well for San Francisco this year. And then here comes Dre Greenlaw. They're the heartbeat of that team. It says a lot when Fred Warner, who I think a lot of people believe could be the best middle linebacker in football, he acknowledges Dre Greenlaw is the heartbeat of this team. It's kind of like the Evans Godwin thing we were just speaking about. And then Devondre Campbell, when they tell him to go in the third quarter last week, he says no. And then we find out that he's getting suspended for the next 3 games. I thought they were just going to get rid of him altogether, but we don't know how the logistics of contracts and things go. But when you hear something like that as a guy that's suited up for 9 seasons in the National Football League, what goes through your head? Because I know a lot of people are like, screw that guy, they should get rid of him. My first mind has always gone since, being friends with you is I hope there's something not going on with him mentally, right? This is a guy he's been a decent player. This isn't a guy that's always been a scrub. He doesn't care. He's got a bad attitude. For the most part, he seems like a good guy, but he's just in a jacked up space right now. And to me, it could be career suicide.
Well, it is career suicide not going in a football game. Do I know it's a mental thing? No, it is a mental thing. If your boss says go in and you say I'm not going in, there's no other way to call it but that's mental, okay? For me, there's certain situations where sometimes I'll see a player snap on a coach or I'll see a player snap on another player. That happens. That's just human nature. That happens. Sometimes in the radio you see people snap on each other. It's just it's human nature. But when you see somebody give up on their teammates, okay, your coach is one thing, but if you don't go back in that game, you're giving up on every one of your teammates. You got to go. There's no. And I heard somebody bring it up the other day. They were talking about, I think Trent Williams lost a child or something, and there was a couple other players that have been through some tragic situations.
Somebody on their team, Ricky Pearsall got shot. Travarius Ward lost his 1-year-old. I think Trent Williams lost a child too. That team's been through the ringer this year.
Yeah, but they're on the football field.
But they're on the football field,
and you're not on the football field. Right. So how is Trent Williams, who lost a kid, looking at you saying, I don't want to go back on the gosh darn football field? What is he thinking of this kid? So once again, I hope the best for this kid, but if I'm an organization, I wouldn't put a penny on that kid again. Once you, like Roberto Duran, once you quit, that's it. You're a quitter.
No mas, for sure.
No mas.
What's going on at the digs this week, man, as we get closer to the holidays?
Well, we're preparing for a big Friday game with the Hoosiers and the Notre Dame.
Where's your confidence level at?
Faux. It's not high, Jay. It's not high. As a lifelong Hoosier fan, or until when I got there, I've seen what they've gone through.
Is it that, or is it because of Notre Dame? Because Notre Dame is a guy, if objectively you look at Notre Dame, you're like, they're another team that they got great offensive linemen, they build it in the trenches. So how much of that is I've seen this story for Indiana before, but also acknowledging, how good and what makes Notre Dame so good?
I would almost rather them go against an SEC high-flying team than one of them nasty trench teams like Notre Dame. So I could be wrong. Listen, I told Marcus if they figure out a way to beat Notre Dame, we're going to go to New Orleans to watch them play Georgia, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Let's hope. Go Hoosiers, baby.
So, Diggs, a lot of things going on there. Tell us about In the Trenches, what we got going on there.
Yeah, well, actually, I was going to do a little bit before, but I'm going to end up doing it after this. But In the Trenches, I put on every Monday. You can get everywhere you can get podcasts, and I just basically break down Buccaneer football and tell a couple stories, and that's about it.
Sounds good, brother. Make sure you follow him on all social media platforms at Ian Beckles. I appreciate you, brother. I'll talk to you later on this week.
All right, kid. One love.
One love to the one and only Ian Beckles, number 62 in your programs, number 1 in your hearts. Wow. I mean, I always love starting out the Monday show talking to our guy, Ian Beckles. It really brings it back. And shout out to Edwin Rodriguez. Glad you guys are on this podcast. The DAE made a mistake letting both of you go. It is what it is. Nature of the beast, Edwin. Again, still got a lot of love for everybody over there. And I actually had somebody reach out to me yesterday about the whole thing that went on. And listen, it's just, you could be upset about it. You could, do I miss it over there? Yeah, of course. I miss the guys. I miss the camaraderie. I miss all the people. But, change is a good thing. And sometimes when you're doing something for a long time, you need something to kind of shake and rattle the cages a little bit. And this is exactly what happened to me. So it's given me the motivation to start this podcast and to go 5 days a week starting in 2025. And I'm grateful for that. I'm thankful for that. Now, unfortunately, and shout out to Ashley as well. Can't believe I've been missing this podcast for as long as I have. I appreciate you. Ian will join us pretty much every Monday on the program, but we got some other things coming down the pike, Ian and I as well. So make sure, again, this is why you want to follow us on all social media podcasts. But people have asked me too, right? Can you still get credentials? Can you still do all these things? Well, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Shout out to the Lightning, shout out to the Bucs, shout out to the Rays, shout out to USF for still credentialing me and still, welcoming in me to these games and to be able to cover them. And people ask, like, what are you doing? Like, what do you do at these games? And when people ask that question, I know some people look at it like disrespect. I don't take it as that. I take it as like, you're wondering, like, how are you still in there? Like, how are you still in the group? That's fine. I have no problem answering that whatsoever. I'm still going to these games. I'm still live tweeting them. I'm still going, pregame, morning skates for hockey, post-game press conferences and scrums. I still want to continue to do that. So I've always felt by going to, and not everybody feels this way, right? But you saw this when I was at WDAE, right? I, as a full-time host, covered the Lightning, covered the Buccaneers, covered USF, covered WWE, UFC. I didn't have to do that. And to give you kind of a sneak peek behind the curtain, I didn't get paid any more to do that. I just felt like I needed to be in attendance. I needed to speak to these athletes. I thought the perspective of me being at these games and at these events gave me a better perspective to be able to articulate my thoughts on these subjects for my show. Now, not everybody like that, but for me, it's a little different. It was a little different. Mike sounds a little gainy. How's the microphone sound? Everybody chime in on that one real quick. I thought the mic was okay. All right, working on it. This is a work in progress, but I appreciate it. But I always thought that was something that was important to me. Always important to be able to go to these games and to let everybody know this is what I thought by going to these games. I could give you insight of this is what Steven Stamkos had to say. This is what Evan Longoria had to say. This is what Jameis Winston had to say. Like having one-on-one conversations with these guys, I thought that was important. Now I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think Bart Hill, the Lightning wouldn't know what to do if they couldn't see your crazy shoes each and every game? You're right. And I haven't been there the last couple of games because we're only a one-car family right now because of the storms. So my girlfriend, she lost her car in the hurricane. So we've been sharing a car. So Mondays and Fridays when I'm doing the podcast, I'm like, go ahead, take the car to work, go pick up the kids, do what you got to do because I'll be here. So I haven't been able to go to some of those games, but you're right. And I want to hear from you. Let's open this conversation real quick. Does it matter to you if your local media, your local sports radio host, your local podcast host, does it matter to you if they go to the games? And I don't know if we brought this up in my decade of being at WDAE. And it wasn't like I didn't bring it up because I was scared of like what somebody was going to say. And I'm not saying this because I'm throwing anybody under the bus. It's just they feel like they can do their job in a different way by not going to the games. That's fine. Like T-Kraz hosts the pre and post game show for the Bucs, and he does it at the studio. He doesn't go to the games. He goes to some Rays games, but he doesn't really cover the Lightning. That's his prerogative. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Aaron Jacobson goes to the Rays games. Doesn't go to the Bucs games, doesn't really go to the Lightning games. And I'm talking doesn't go to the games as far as like in the press box in the media. And Pat, he does the pre and post game for 98 Rock for the Bucs, but he doesn't really go to any of the other games. And again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, right? But I'm just curious to hear what you guys have to say about the importance of whether these people are at their games. They can do it their way. Over my almost 11 years working in the media, I always thought it was important to go to the games. I always thought that I could give a different insight and a different perspective by going to these games. I always also felt that you could critique the players and the teams if you went to the games, if you had the balls to go into the locker room and ask them questions the next day, because then you realize that it's not personal. And it never was with me. I never got personal. I will never get personal. And I also am not one of those people, and I know others are like that. I'm never going to call for somebody's job. At the end of the day, I'll question, but I'll never say this person needs to lose their job, because there's so much that goes into it that we don't know. But I want to hear from you guys, just like Jake contributed here. Of course, there's things you can't comment on unless you're there. The TV doesn't always show the sidelines and what happens on them during commercial breaks. That's a great point, Jake. It is. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't do your job if you don't go to the games, but I just always felt like I could do my job better if I was in attendance. So yes, you sacrifice, gas and you sacrifice time with your family, but I always thought that was part of the gig. It's just an interesting, I just wanted to give everybody out there, if you're spending your time to be here with me today, kind of a little peek behind the curtain on how we do things when it comes to covering sports here in the Tampa Bay area. And as grateful as I am to be able to get credentials, I mean, I had an unfortunate situation this past week where I was trying to go to the UFC event at Amalie Arena, but I was declined for a credential. And they said, if you reach this message in error, you can email them back. And no response. And mind you, I've already covered 3 UFC events here in the Tampa Bay area. I covered UFC 205 at Madison Square Garden, where I was credentialed by the Ultimate Fighting Championship, but no response. So not having that affiliation probably hurt me in that situation. And it is what it is. Like you hope that you build yourself up to the point where that it doesn't matter, right? Because not everybody needs like a big time like iHeart affiliation, but hey, it certainly helps. It doesn't hurt, right? Let's go to Bart Hill. Not so much if you can't go to the game, but the inside and inclusion is much more intimate when you go to the games and much better coverage. Chris Perdomo, I don't think it's so much matters to me, but I prefer that they go instead of just doing the feed. And we don't even know if they watch the game, the whole game. I appreciate that you go to all the games and cover them, because I feel like you do give a better perspective, and I appreciate you doing that. And I do appreciate the live tweeting and coverage of some of the games that you do. I do like that a lot. Chris, I appreciate that, man. Thank you very much. Father Football Gaming, my guy Nick, if you report on atmosphere and feel you should be there, if your role is gauging, stoking the fan perspective, maybe you don't need to be in the building. That is a great perspective, Nick. And knowing who I am not one of those guys that's like a hot take king. Like, I'm not just going to say things to piss you off. I'm going to say things to make you think, and I'm going to say things hopefully from an informative point of view that, hey, this is what I'm thinking. It may not be what everybody else is thinking, but I just feel like it gives me more tools in my tool belt if I'm at the game. If I can tell you what it's like watching somebody grimace in pain after dealing with injuries in a game, watching guys in the locker room celebrate after a big win, being in the Bucs locker room after the win last week against the Raiders and listening, going back to Cali before they headed cross country to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. Like, I thought that was meaningful for me. Same thing with the Lightning after they lost their playoff game a couple of years ago. Alex Killorn sitting in the locker room and just sitting and watching him, knowing that it was his last game as a member of the Bolts. Like, that was something that you don't get if you don't go into the locker room. So I will continue to go in the locker rooms if they'll have me, if I get credentialed. But I'm just glad we got a chance to have that conversation as well. One thing I want to mention, too, talking about the Buccaneers, is Mike Evans. As much as I truly believe it's important, not just to him, but to the franchise and to all of us here in the Tampa Bay area, that he gets 1,000 yards once again this season. And what he was able to do yesterday in that game against the LA Chargers. And we had this conversation with Bailey Adams on Pewter Report, from Pewter Report on Friday. He needed one of these games. He needed like a $150, a $160, 159 he got against the Chargers. 9 catches, 159 yards on 11 targets. He's at 749 yards on the season. So he's 251 away. He's got 3 games left to do it. Do you think Mike Evans will get 1,000 yards? Feel free to put it there at the bottom of the screen. We always want to hear from you. Facebook, YouTube, and on Twitter. Do you think Mike Evans is going to reach 1,000 yards? But as important it is for all of us to see Mike Evans get 1,000 yards once again, what I really want to see him achieve this year is the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. I don't think there is a more prestigious award that you could get in sports than the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. And I just love that they denote the winners by putting the actual award on their jersey for the rest of their career. But just think about that. It has nothing to do with what you do on the field. It has everything to do with what you do off the field. And for Mike Evans, a guy that has literally given everything to our Tampa Bay area, I would love to see him win this award. And it's not just here, his hometown of Galveston, Texas. Like, this is a guy that he makes you proud to be a fan of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He makes you proud to spend, or he makes it okay, right? You have that hard-earned money, you have this disposable income, you want to go support the Buccaneers, and you want to go support a guy like number 13. And if you didn't see how he found out he was the nominee, I implore you to go back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers social media. They did it with all class. He's sitting there at Raymond James Stadium, and it's actually Chris Godwin who informed him that he was the nominee for the Buccaneers for the Walter Payton Man of the Year. So again, as much as I would love to see him get 1,000 yards, and I do think he's going to do that, I think it would be as cool, if not cooler, if he was the Walter Payton Man of the Year, because that's something that is going to live with him, not just for the rest of his career, but for the rest of his life. You want to be able to make an impact, right? When you're a professional athlete, and we're going to talk to our guy, Braydon Coburn, here in a moment. You want to talk about making an impact, and a lot of times it's on the field, it's on the court, it's on the ice. But if you can make a huge impact off of the field, off of the court, off of the ice, so much so that you are the guy that they put above the rest in your league, I think that's special, man. It's something unto in itself where it's just, I love it. I think we should focus more on the good deeds that people do outside of the, what they do on a Sunday, or outside of what they do on game day, because there's so many negative things that we see in media. There's so many negative things that we hear in the news, but it seems like at times we only hear about the good things when they're getting celebrated at the end of the year for the Walter Payton Man of the Year, or the My Cause, My Cleats, or the certain nights that these teams have. There should be more. And that's part of the reason why we love a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning, is that there's so many great stories of Jeff Vinik giving back, giving money out of his own pocket to our, community heroes. The Lightning and you heard it if you were listening to the conversation with Gabby Shirley that we had on Friday, the youngster from Calgary dealing with, cancer, and the Lightning having him out there on the ice for morning skate, him reading off the opening, the starting lineup. Like, that's what it's all about. That is what sets players, that's what sets teams apart. It's a beautiful thing. And I just really hope that we focus a little bit more on that as we go forward when it comes to sports, and less of all the hoopla and the drama. Wanted to answer this question real quick before we bring in Kobe. Don't think you, and this from our friends over at Joe Bucs Fan, don't think you have to attend games to be informative and entertaining. So much depends on the sport. The real beauty is doing both, attending and coming home and rewatching on the DVR. That is a great, great point. And after every game that I go to, I always watch highlights, I always watch clips, and I always watch if they're on the DVR. I just kind of almost leave it on in the background while I'm doing other work, because you see things on TV that you don't see when you're there in person. So that is a fantastic perspective from our friends over at Joe Bucs Fan, and then our guy Phil Henney. Michael Lynn Evans, still elite, 1,000 yards unlocked. The image of him signing those cleats for that kid is more about who he is than any of his 1,000-yard seasons. Him re-signing here was the most important contract of Light's career. You couldn't have said that any better, my friend. All right, let's bring him in. Let's talk some Lightning hockey with our guy, Braydon Coburn. Kobe, what's going on, brother? How are you?
I'm doing great, Jay. How are you, buddy?
We're doing well, man. And I'd love to hear your perspective on that when it comes to the Bolts, of just how the organization as a whole, they treat the military. They treat, the people that have been stricken with cancer. They treat kids and families and the community. It's something really special, isn't it?
Well, Jay, I think every coach I've ever played for, they talk about this is our family. You're incorporating your dressing room into your family. And one thing that I think great organizations do, and Jeff Finnick was kind of he's the head of this, is that he says, we're a family, but also the community. We're also a family. We live together. And he really took that to heart. And I think when you do that, you have the guys, the organization embraces the community, but the community embraces you back. And I think when that happens and you people see that, and it takes time. It's not just something that's going to happen overnight. This has been going on for 15 plus years around here, about trying to build this relationship. And I think it's just a very positive thing. And they've just put the people in place to do the job, to make sure that the outreach is there from the ground up, whether it's people in need, and it's just supporting each other. And when boil it all down, that's what it's about.
Kobe, you played for multiple teams in your career, but I remember at the Alex Killorn, Ryan McDonough Can Jam event years ago, right there in downtown. And I remember because Mac was all jacked up, he broke his foot, so he's riding around in a scooter. That was one thing I remember. But I also remember your kids being out there, and they had so much fun. And you, after your playing career, you're still here. Your family's still here. What was that kind of that clinching thing that was like, this is where we want to raise our family, this is where we want to be?
Well, there was a couple things. It's the relationships you make when you're playing, and my kids have grown up here. As much as they claim to be half Canadian, they're really they're flow grown as they come. But my wife has made a wonderful life here for us, and just the people that we've met, and that it's special because our family is back home in Western Canada, and we did not take the decision to settle here and raise our kids here lightly.
Right.
But we just felt like the community and what we needed as a family, and just a place to raise a family, was the perfect scenario. And it's just been it's been fantastic.
Yeah, and we're glad you're here. You're doing such a great job there on FanDuel Sports Network with whoever it is you're working with, but with our guy Paul Kennedy as well.
Yeah, Paul's the best. He's
the best, man.
He's the ultimate gentleman. It's like one of those guys you look at and you just like, I don't know if he maybe somewhere down in there, but under that suit, he's got a bad bone, but not that I can tell. He's just pure class all the time. And just I've learned so much from him, and so grateful that I get to work with a man like that.
Yeah, he's class personified, man. And he's so articulate, and he's always thinking about different things. And Jay, you should watch Need for Speed on Netflix about F1. And I'm like, Paul, I'm not really into cars. He goes, Jay, trust me, it's fantastic. And then I was like, okay. And then I binge watched 8 seasons in a row. And I'm like, if Paul Kennedy tells you to do something, you're gonna do it, even if you don't think it's kind of in your wheelhouse. But yeah, he's
so humble. He knows, he's been around sports for a very long time, and he'll tell you he knows nothing about hockey and nothing about football and nothing about basketball, but that couldn't be further from the truth. The guy is just a wealth of knowledge, and he understands people, and he understands the dynamics, and he knows how to build drama. And that's why he's so great as a host and as a coverer of sports.
Yeah, and it's a good segue, because I think somebody that really knows people is a guy like John Cooper. Getting to know Coop over the last decade or so, and I read a book years ago. Tony La Russa, famous Hall of Fame baseball manager, says every coach is either a master tactician, kind of a riverboat gambler, or like a superhuman psychologist, right? Because you get these former players, and you're like, all right, well, they can tell you about the experience of the game. Then you have these X's and O guys. But then you have guys that are just personally, they can motivate you. And it just seems like Coop is that guy where he's not afraid to mix up the lines. He's not afraid, like we saw last year or 2 years ago, to sit Pointer, Stammer, and Cooch in Vancouver. He just doesn't, he finds a way. What part does he have to play in the way that this team has played this year? I mean, we know Gensel, we know how great, Cooch and Point and Vassie and Hetty and those guys are, but in what way has John Cooper made an impact on this team this year that has allowed them to especially be as good as they've been in the last, 4 games where they, get 6 points out of 8 on a road trip that sometimes can give some people some issues?
Well, I think the number one thing with Coop is that he's authentic. The guy you see in the dressing room is the same guy that's you find on the street, and it's just him. He's been able to have success by being himself. And a lot of guys feel like when they walk into that dressing room as a head coach, they have to become somebody else, and they step outside of maybe their personality. And I think Coop is very authentic in the fact that who he is and who you see is the coach he is. And the other thing about Coop that I've noticed when I played and through the course of the years that I played for him was he changed. He changed he was adaptable. He's flexible in the way he runs his team, the way he treats people, and he's able to find what the team needs and then and I guess basically deploy that strategy. And he's not set in his ways about, just because I was coached this way 40, 50 years ago, this is how it's going to be run. He's very knowledgeable about how to manage people and let people do his job. And he's not a taskmaster by any means. He lets guys, his staff is as connected as I've seen any coaching staff before. He's got a longtime assistants in Jeff Halpern and Zettler and Blashill, and these guys, they carry they do a heavy job. And Coop's not a micromanager. He is responsible for the team at the end of the day, but he lets these guys play to their strengths and coach to their strengths. And I think the team really responds because the message coming out of there is a unified message, and his message is consistent, and it's very responsible based and accountability based, and players appreciate that at the end of the day when that's the fact.
One of, if not the longest tenured member of the Lightning organization is a good buddy of ours in Nigel Kerwin, video coach. Him and Brian Garlick do such a fantastic job.
Is he not the longest ever? Day one is pretty long.
I know, it's pretty funny, right? And one of the best parts about it is that Nigel used to be a ball boy for the Buccaneers when our good buddy Ian Beckles was playing for the Buccaneers. So it's just kind of a weird, he's been around Tampa Bay sports for a ton of time. What is Nigel's role? Because we always think, I think for the layman's, they think all right, when a goal goes in and they think it's offside or they challenging goalie interference, that's when Nigel's on. But it's so much more than that. So for a guy and it's so great because the Tampa Bay area, they really do show love to Nigel every year. Home opener, he gets one of the loudest applauses for anybody. What does Nigel and Brian do from when you were there, on a game day? How does he help the team outside of just, challenges and things like that?
Well, he's been there since day one, and you'd never know because he's going to serve the rookie coming up that maybe wants some extra clips, and he'll go to the depths of whatever you need to find those clips to help that player become better. But he's just a down-to-earth guy. Him and Brian Gerlach, they do a fantastic job. It's fun sometimes to sit in that war room when the game's going on and they got the headsets on and they're talking back and forth. They have a little bit of their own language in there about the way they're going to call things, and they're constantly checking offsides, checking different things, and clipping different segments of the game at the same time. It's an art form for sure. They're not just sitting back pushing a button for sure. They're definitely engaged in what's happening. And then this part about they're a part of the staff. They're part of what happens with the pre-scouts. They're a part of what happens with player evaluations. And John Cooper has been able to do that, and he gives those guys a voice. So I think when you do that and you empower that, and you have 30 years of hockey knowledge in Nigel and Brian Gerlach, he's got a truly he really has a great hockey mind as well. So those guys are valuable assets, and they get their opinion matters in that coach's room.
Our Tampa Bay Lightning going on the road after that 8-1 win 2 Thursdays ago against the Sharks. That was a nice way to send the guys off. Win in Vancouver, you lose a tough one 2-1 at Edmonton, then you absolutely blast the Flames and the Seattle Kraken. Over these last 4 games, kind of what is the big thing that stood out to you, Kobe, about this Bolt squad?
Well, right away, the fact that they have overcome adversity from injuries. The talk about this team was, hey, they're very top heavy. And that was kind of the narrative right from the beginning. If any of the top players are injured, and we've seen top players on this team be injured throughout the year, and I've been, it hasn't always been wins, but I've been very encouraged the fact that when Victor Hedman goes down or when Point is under the lineup or Kucherov's under the lineup, this team has responded. And it's not easy to go to the West and play teams. And, frankly, I think Seattle's had a fairly good year. Calgary's had a good year on paper. Vancouver and Edmonton, those are not easy places to go in and play. And this was very encouraging, very good, very good road games. And I think that the fact that you see guys come into the lineup flying from across the country, from Syracuse to show up and then contribute, it's a good testament to the organizational strength of this team and the fact that they can have the ability to integrate guys early. And it's kind of like last year too. We saw last year, anytime there was a young guy that was injected into the lineup, it seemed like there was like a renewed energy on the team. And there was almost like this energy bump from the young guys that came up. And I think that is something that the management recognizes and understands, and they really lean into, especially when there's the next man up kind of mentality with injuries.
In your career, whether it was with the Lightning or another team, who was that one rookie that came in that made the biggest impact?
Well, I don't know. I talked about this a few weeks ago when Dallas was in town. And I remember Anthony Cirelli's first game. It was in Dallas, and I didn't know a whole lot about Anthony, and just a wonderful person. Everything I've learned about him since, and the battles and the friendships we've created since then. But stepping into that first game, and he scores 2 goals, and we're just all looking at each other like, this kid's not going back to Syracuse. This is no way. So he brought a different energy, and the way he played the game was so responsible from a rookie player, and it was just it was something else. But that's a guy that comes to mind right away.
Yeah, I remember that first postseason. He was a rookie, and he had the most penalty killing time at anybody in the NHL. I was like,
Isn't that remarkable?
That doesn't happen. That the first word that comes to mind when something like that happens is trust. Like, you just don't get that opportunity to be out there and be the first guy over the boards when you're a man down, unless the coach has the ultimate trust in you. And that that translates into what we're seeing now in the next couple of weeks when we see the Four Nations with him and Hagel making the team. I mean, I know a lot of people, when they were predicting these rosters, they put the 12 best forwards and the 6 best defensemen and 3 best goalies, but they don't realize that, like, you need penalty killers. You need guys that are going to be okay with playing a bottom 6 role. I mean, just speak about Cirelli. We know Point, the reason why Point made it, but Cirelli and Hagel, the impact those guys have had to John Cooper trusted them enough to play in a best on best tournament, and they're going to see their fair share of time.
They sure will. They'll be there. They'll be the checkers, and they'll be fine with whatever role you give them. But there's no substitute for hustle. And those guys, they never take a shift off. And I think really the one thing that separates those two guys than a lot of guys is their hockey IQ is just through the roof. Their ability to be able to understand what the other team is doing and put themselves in the right position and make up time and space and put themselves in a position where, maybe they're not going to have the most points. Maybe they're not going to be in a spot where you look up on the top 15 and there's those two guys sitting in the assist or goal categories or point categories. But at the end of the day, if there's a metric that you could really use that for a guy that played a complete 200 foot game, those guys would be, 1 and 2 in the league, just because of how they approach the game and their mentality and understanding what it takes to win.
Yeah, I had Greg Wyshynski on a couple weeks ago on the program, and he was saying, Jay, I don't know if anybody realized this, but Patrice Bergeron retiring kind of opened up that spot possibly for Anthony Cirelli. And I go, I don't know if that's 100% true, but we'll take it. And I'm sure he will as well, because he, you talk about 200-foot players. I mean, Bergeron he was just fantastic for so many years there for Boston. Good question here. How are the Bolts playing their best hockey without Victor Hedman?
Sometimes when that happens, you simplify your game, and playing a simple game it's an amazing amazing things happen when you do that. And the big problem for any team, and it's always been a problem for the Lightning, but really any team in the National Hockey League, is turnovers. And when you have a young decor that, and I'll give Ryan McDonough a ton of credit, because he is a guy that has been stepping up in that leadership role when Hetty's out of the lineup, and really guiding these younger guys to just what a wonderful way to mentor people. And you watch him play and you say, okay, I can do that. He's not doing anything like overly special, but he's just really good at doing the simple things and blocking shots and having that commitment. So that effect, that trickle down effect throughout the defense is quite fun to watch, and something that I'm not surprised to see. But it really is a simplification of what they're trying to do in the D zone. And I think we've maybe talked about this before, but having that synergy between what's happening in Syracuse and what's happening in Tampa, between the defensive systems and really kind of the overall systems that are being run by Bouchard and Cooper, it makes a difference, and it makes that transition easier for players when they come up.
Yeah, and you've noticed that because on that trip, you've played games without Victor Hedman, without JJ Moser, without Eric Chernak, and they're just able to kind of rifle these different guys in there, the Carlisles and Santinis of the world, and it's been able to work out. I want to ask you this because one of my old coaches back in the day, Coach Pyle, lifelong Rangers fan, cannot remember a stretch like this. The only thing I can think of, Drury and Laviolette have lost the locker room due to the treatment of Jacob Trouba. What do you make of a team like the Rangers, Kobe? I mean, this was a team I had them going all the way before the year, just because you have the goalie, you have star players, you got good blue liners. But man, they have been atrocious. They trade their captain. I mean, don't be the captain of the Rangers because they'll trade you. I was surprised they didn't trade him in the Lightning like Mac and Callie. But I mean, what do you make of the Trouba situation? What do you make of what's going on with the Rangers? Because when you look at it on paper, I mean, you got all-stars, you got guys that are 40 goal scorers, and it's like oil and water with that club this year.
Well, first off, Peter Laviolette was one of my favorite coaches that I ever had. I played for him in Philly, and I think he's just a fantastic guy, and he wears his emotions on his sleeves. And like you, I'm very surprised this Ranger team has played the way they have this season. But it just goes to show, sometimes when things start going the wrong way and the snowball starts rolling downhill, it can be very, very hard to stop. And especially when there's high expectations in a market like New York, where I think they were thinking not just make the playoffs, they're thinking win the Stanley Cup. It can be tough, and players feel that eventually, especially when things start going sliding as much as they have. And you're not getting the offensive contributions. The defense has been porous, and you're looking around saying, what's the problem? And we got to make changes. And it's a tough thing there. And it's just one of those things where, you're looking for moves, and the fact that Trouba is the captain, and they do trade him, and they think that might be the case. And I think maybe they had tried trading him earlier in the year, and he had blocked the trade with his no trade clause. So there's kind of some things there, and it's tough. You need your team to be able to lean on your captain, and when you've tried to trade him and he blocked the trade, it's not an ideal situation for that New York Ranger hockey club.
No, it isn't. And yeah, they try to trade him in the offseason. He's got the no trade clause. His wife, I believe, is in medical school. And I mean, this is why you work to get that no trade clause in there. The same thing happened with our buddy Barclay Goodrow. And they said, all right, well, we're going to waive you, and then you're going to go to a bad team, but go to San Jose. And he's like, I don't want to go to San Jose. They're like, well, we're trading you to San Jose. So I just wonder how that whole thing is going to shake out. Last thing for me, what do you think of the Four Nations face-off? Ryan B. wants to know.
I'm excited. I'm excited to watch it. It's going to be fun just to see the way this is all kind of been worked together. I have to say, one of my favorite hockey memories outside of Stanley Cup playoffs was as a kid watching the World Cup. I loved watching that. I remember going to my friend Matt Nelson's house and sitting in his living room and watching Canada versus US, and the emotions that we had, and watching Chris Chelios, cross-check guys, and Tony Amante, and the Canadians, and Eric Lindros, and Wayne Gretzky, and all those guys. It was fantastic. And the only thing I really wish that I know there's this whole geopolitical scene, but man, it would have been nice to see a Team Russia in there. It just, you think about our game's best players, and the fact that you're not going to watch Nikita Kucherov go up against the best Canadians or the best Americans or the Finns and the Swedes. It's too bad. But I also understand that there's bigger issues at play there.
Yeah, it's kind of wild for all the years that, Ilya Bryzgalov for a while was like really the only kind of big name Russian goalie. And now you look at it and you can argue that they have 4 guys that deserve with Vazzy, Shesterkin, Bob, and Sorokin. So it's kind of
Canada,
wild.
you look at their goaltending situation and it's probably fair to say it's as thin as it's ever been in the history of international play. We've always had a big superstar to lean on. And this is the year where you're looking at the 3 guys and you're like, I don't necessarily know who the starter is. And not for the fact of like, you really just don't know, because those guys are not guys that jump off the paper and say true number 1 superstar in the net for your team that you're going to look for. So that's going to be interesting. And the Russians, obviously we know about them, but the Americans, I think, are in a very good spot. They have a lot of goaltending depth as well. And I think that's going to be a real strength for their team.
Yeah, Hellebuck, Ottinger, and Swayman is a pretty good triumvirate of goalies to have there. And we've been waiting for many years to see Austin Matthews on the big scale against Connor McDavid. I mean, it's going to be crazy. Like, who do we root for, right? I mean,
well, I know who I'm rooting for.
I know you. But it's like, for me as a kid that grew up on Long Island, playing hockey, and, I'm going to be rooting against John Cooper for the first time in my life. That's going to be kind of weird.
Yeah, no, it's going to be fun to watch. And I think that, just being able to do this, and it's going to serve a great precursor to what's going to happen a year from now in the Olympics as well.
I'm going to probably wear red, white, and blue crazy colored shoes for John Cooper just to talk some smack, because you know how I roll with the crazy shoes. So.
Oh, well, I think maybe there's a bet in there somewhere, Jay, that you gotta get rolling in.
Man, you read my mind. The one and only Braydon Coburn. Kobe, I appreciate your friendship and your time today, my friend. Keep up the great work, and have a great holidays, man. We'll talk soon.
You too, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
You got it, buddy. The one and only Braydon Coburn. Man, we are so blessed to be able to have so many of our former athletes stay in the Tampa Bay area, and Kobe is right up there, top of the list. We meet these people. You meet these people in your life, right? And you hear the words like salt of the earth, right? Kobe's one of those guys. Salt of the earth, always has a smile on his face, always is happy to just be around and to talk hockey. And, I posted something on a video last year. It was the Lightning losing in overtime, and it was Mikhail Sergachev and Brandon Hagel, and there was some miscommunication. And Kobe, I saw Kobe the next day. He's like, yeah, you were wrong. He said it in such a nice way. And he's like, let me show you why. And we broke down the video. And I don't know if a lot of you guys remember, but there was a picture or a video, whether it was John Momola or Pat and Aaron, like they posted on social. I don't care if I'm wrong. Like I am always going to defer to the guys that play the game. We have our opinions. I thought it was, Sergachev's fault. He said, no, it was Hagel's fault. So it was kind of cool to be able to, I thought it was just cool that he was able to let me know, hey, this is what they were doing. This is the communication. I understand where you were getting at. I understand your perspective on thing. Like it was like a man-to-man or a zone type of defense in overtime, but this is what they were talking about in that situation. And the way that he was able to articulate that to me, it wasn't condescending, like I know better than you. He was just trying to inform me, because he knew that that's not where I was coming from. I wasn't trying to I know better than you. I just thought in my perspective, and of course I didn't play anywhere near at the same level as them, but I just thought hey, you got to give up on that spot, get back to the middle of the ice and play where a defenseman plays, right there, smack dab in front of the net. But he's like, no, 3-on-3 is different. You're playing a man-on-man type of defense. And if you say that you have the guy at the top, you have that guy at the blue line, that's what you have to continue to do. You can't just say oh, yeah, this is the way it's going to go. So shout out to Braydon Coburn, because he is just one of the best, salt of the earth, and one of those people that makes you proud to be a fan of the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's done such a great job, as has our next guest. The one and only Michael Kelly joins us. Michael Kelly, the Vice President of Athletics for our University of South Florida. Hey, MK, how are you? Happy Monday.
Jay, happy Monday to you. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks so much, man. And I appreciate the support and the friendship over the years. It means more than you know. So excited. We've been talking about our USF Bulls for a while now, and I just want to take everybody kind of behind the curtain, maybe a little bit of like how the Hawaii Bowl comes into fruition, because obviously we know that there's offers and these, but like, how do you settle on like, hey, this is the bowl that we're going to go to? Because we know that it's like, there's a lot of, endeavoring to get there too. Cause it's like, all right, well, we got to get fans there. We got to get, all of our, all the trucks and all of our equipment and things like that. So how does that like decision come down? Like, hey, this is where we're going to go. This is the game we're going to play in.
Yeah, sure. It is a little bit unique in terms of the Hawaii Bowl opportunity, because it wasn't one that's necessarily in the Americans lineup. So that made it a little bit unique too. The conference office came to us early in the season and said that it's very likely that could switch to one of our bowls, but it's going to need to be, someone's going to need to commit to do it. And certainly with the distance involved and in some manners, the date being on Christmas Eve, it's something that some people shy away from. But once we qualified for bowl eligibility, was something Coach Golish and I talked about, and a combination of a lot of things. When you look at the date that's involved, being 24th, that could be a challenge for some, but allows, Coach liked it because it allowed us to stay together and practice all the way through before we leave later in the week to head out to Hawaii. Allows them to play the game, and we will leave right after the game and get back to Tampa, midday on Christmas Day, which will still allow our players and staff to kind of enjoy that. So we kind of like that. Like the continuity of playing together, and then the destination and the operations of itself are really, really good. Sometimes you might shy away from it from a financial standpoint. And the good thing about this bowl, they've adjusted over the time and the feedback, because they do provide one of the charter jets so the team can get over there, and that helps minimize a lot of expense, which is important. And then unlike most bowl games where you have a pretty considerable ticket allotment where you have to make sure your fans buy all those, you might be on the hook for a big unused ticket bill. This is one that doesn't have any ticket obligations with it. So a combination of knowing that not many of our fans could get over there realistically was part of what entered into our business decision. But when you kind of put all that into one big consideration, we thought it was awesome. I mean, just a chance to continue our elevation of our program by having back-to-back bowl seasons, to go to a place that's really special that very, very few, if any, of our players have ever had a chance to go to. And then to be able to be on a great national television window on ESPN on Christmas Eve, where people can still see it and gather around the fireplace in some places of the country, or certainly have a time of togetherness to watch the Bulls. So all things considered, when we thought about the continuity, great destination, great amenities during the bowl itself for an experience for our student athletes, we just thought it was the right thing for us. And it just all kind of came together. So when we were able to kind of raise our hand early in the process to the conference that we would be willing to do that, it was kind of taking a bird in the hand, right? Because it announced a little bit early. We could have waited a couple days later, and maybe we would have been shipped to some other bowl, and you just didn't have that in your hands. But once we knew something that Coach and I were comfortable with, we raised our hand, volunteered, and our guys are ecstatic about it.
I love it. I think this is a huge thing for our area. I know a lot. I haven't heard one person that thought this was a bad idea, just as far as the optics at the very least, right? Because I think this helps you going forward. Like, hey, USF is willing to go out there and to travel, put yourself on this scale, and you're also making a memory. I've asked a bunch of people in the last couple of weeks, have you ever even been to Hawaii? And people say no. And these are grown-ups, right? These kids are going to be able to take a trip. And we see it, maybe a little bit more with like some of our basketball. We see the tournaments early on in the season, going to Bahamas, going to Myrtle Beach, doing these different things. But man, how much does this help you moving forward, MK, as far as, maybe it's recruiting or just even maybe outside just the football of just other people like, hey, we're willing to do these type of things to really expose our brand nationally and internationally.
Yeah, I think it's a big brand play. I think you're right, Jay. I mean, and to play on Christmas Eve, playing a kind of a bowl that people even, our current players, people my age, people, my parents, people always kind of associate, cool games, whether it was the old Pro Bowl, whether it's the Aloha Bowl or the current Hawaii Bowl for all these years. It's just a cool brand connection with a very, obviously a, pinnacle kind of destination like Honolulu and Hawaii. So and when you combine that with everything else that we're doing with recent years of the injection of investment and the way that not only we have poured into it, but our fans, and to be able to have a chance for this to, it starts with facilities. It starts with the ability to make sure we have an excellent student athlete experience. And when you can play and do all the things we've done and have a year-end situation where our players are going to Honolulu, that's a pretty special trip. And you're right. At the end of the day, we're in the memory making business for those fans that do decide to go there, and certainly most importantly for our student athletes and staff. It's unbelievable. I mean, when I was there, when I was a high school senior, my basketball team played in a tournament there in Honolulu, and it's something I still remember to this day with my teammates and playing. So when this was all coming together, I was like, man, thinking about our 100 some odd guys that have never been, they're going to have a time of their lives, and hopefully, find the right balance to go out there and secure this, fight for this bowl win. And if we can, and a great experience with another winning season, it's just another great step in the right direction for USF football.
I love what you said there. We're in the memory making business. And I feel like that is really applicable to pretty much every business out there. Like when you're trying to put yourself out there, you're trying to grow your brand, when people have options, like you want to make memories. I mean, that's what it's all about, man. When we're on our deathbed, we're not going to be worrying about what our bank account looks like. We're going to think about all the games we went to. I know one of the things I'm going to be thinking about is going to Tuscaloosa this year and seeing and being a little speck on the field at Bryant-Denny when there's 100,000 people there, and remembering how USF went toe-to-toe with one of the most venerable programs in college football. And to watch how many people were there. I mean, let's focus on that one game there, because unfortunately, USF came up short. But I can't tell you, there was 4 people in the press box covering that from USF. The rest of the 75 people were there from Alabama. And to look down at that section and see how many green and gold were there, I mean, it's got to fill you with pride, Michael, to be able to see that, to know, like, man, because you don't always get that. And I ask Coach Goles this a lot, because he's always process, not result, process. But I also think every once in a while it's good to like kind of stop and smell the roses a little bit and be like, we're on the right track. Was that kind of like an inclination a little bit of like, hey, of course we don't want to just compete in games, we want to win like this, but as far as the support, as far as going toe to toe for the second year, you can kind of see the tangible progress of not just the team but the program as a whole?
Oh, I absolutely can. And there's some people agree with things, no matter, on one side and not on the other, no matter what you do. But, when we play games, like we know it's a very formidable task to go to Alabama on the road and to play games like that. And we haven't shied away from it. And while we didn't come out with the victory that we still, absolutely want, and that's our goal to keep moving toward, it's like, if you don't play those games, you don't have the opportunity to win those games, right? And so we're proud to have that chance and to balance it out as we continue to get better in our conference. And I look at it as a two-way opportunity, right? How do you build the brand and the business in a relatively young program and in a pro market like ours? I think you have to be a little bit different. So that's why it's cool that we've got the Alabamas and the Miamis and the Floridas on our schedule, and as we have in recent years. And then obviously we've got a formidable league that we have not yet won that we need to do. And that's one of our primary goals. And now even more so, because that can very well lead into the college football playoff access point. So we're excited about it. We think it's a great opportunity to play games like that. Our fans want it. Deep down, our players, obviously they want it. They obviously stepped up and played a really good game in both cases. And what to do, it shows you, it measures you up against who's considered amongst the best, right? And so that doesn't, it's no embarrassment to lose a game in the last 5 minutes to Alabama. It shows, all right, man, we went toe to toe for 55 minutes. How do we get to the 60 minutes? And so it usually requires depth, usually requires more recruiting. And what else can we learn in that process? And that's what I'm proud of us. But in the meantime, our fans loved it. People over both those games the last 2 years, I mean, just think, I guess about 8 million people have watched the Bulls go toe to toe with a great program like that. And it raises some respect in that regard, and kind of shows where we stand and where we still need to go.
I thought you did a really good thing in just the entire athletics department as a whole. You guys were pretty much on the forefront of the NIL thing. You saw the wave that was coming. You didn't dip your toe in the water. You were like, hey, we need to get behind our student athletes right off the rip. And now we see. And some people will look at it as, it's a little bit of the wild, wild west. And, there needs to be some type of governing of it. I mean, I still think it's hard, because I still think we are in the infancy of it. But how much has it changed since you made that initial foray into like, hey, we're doing the NIL? And, is this something that changes a lot? Is it something that you guys have a really good grasp on? Like, what is your take on the whole NIL situation?
Well, it's amazing to think how much has changed in such a short period of time. I mean, I came to this role here at USF in 2018. this really still wasn't on the radar then. It didn't become official till 2021 when NIL became even possible. So now here we are in 2024. It's going into potentially a brand new era here in the next summer where full-blown revenue sharing is possibility. So really it's really just been a need to realize the changing tides that are happening. You've got to realize that we look at it as an opportunity at USF. We know that we're in a unique situation because we are relatively young. We are in a conference that we are right now, not through any lack of support or investment or anything like that. It's just really a matter of history and circumstance, right? There's teams that we might very well invest as much in that are in certain leagues that we call the P4 now that are certainly deserve to be there. I'm not saying they don't, but they were there because they just happened to be 100 years old or they were in the right place at the right time. We didn't have that benefit, but what we do have now is to learn what's happening now, to make sure we understand it as best we can, and to be able to try to put everything we can forward to make sure that we measure up to whatever they say the new rules of engagement are. And so that's what we've been trying to navigate. When it was cost of attendance, we went there. When it was being able to provide more nutrition and everything, we went there to the tune of a couple $1 million more in our new nutrition program. When it came to adding more into staffing and recruitment resources, we did that. When we came to adding Alston money, which was, awards that can be provided for tethered to academic performance, we did that. So we keep trying to figure out what's changing, what can we show that we're doing. And then, oh, by the way, at the same time, we're building an operations building, just built an indoor and building a stadium as well. So people that want to kind of look back and just say, oh, you should have had that before. Hey, that's not really a fair critique. This is a young institution. This is an institution that invested appropriately into academics and research, became an AAU institution. And we're only a 28-year-old program in terms of from football. So yes, we want everything in the society the way we want it right now. And I wish we did, but I'm really proud of the trajectory we're on, and we'll keep building. And, our time will come when the time comes. And you just have to believe in everything that you do. And it starts with, to me, you build like a great foundation. You pour into your players, you pour into your student athlete experience, you pour into facilities, you build a community. And we're having an opportunity to do that here. And that makes it a lot of fun. And so this is a huge opportunity for us. We got to adjust. And so the way I look at NIL is that we had to modernize. We put a lot of faith in the statement that I keep saying that we want to build a model athletic department for modern times. We don't have to change things that have been in existence for 120 years. We've only been here for a much shorter period than that. So we can be more nimble. We need to be more nimble. And now all we have to do is keep focusing on the alignment we have, keep focusing on the investment we have, keep learning from our coaches and from our players about what's the right thing for the right mix for what we need today. And then we need to continue to grow our fan base. And that's not a critique of our fan base. That's just the reality of we got to grow it. And we're young. We got to grow it. So if everyone that wants us to be where we all say we want to be, keep coming on the bandwagon, because it's been a lot of fun now with this new stadium coming on, with back-to-back bowl games, with the basketball championship last year, with a lot of good momentum we have in so many things. Let's keep pouring into it. Let's love on these kids, and let's have a good time as a representative of USF and the whole Tampa Bay community.
You got that right. And yeah, it's a good foray into the the Yuengling Center last year, what the men's basketball team was able to do. And how is Coach Fletcher and the team? And it's just such unique circumstances from what happened to Coach Amir. How have they held up? How have they, what do you assess? It's so hard to excuse me, because it's so much, to me, as much as you want them to win, and of course, watch all the games, but I just think about them as human beings and what they've had to deal with. And then saw what you post on social media that that now there's an award, a Citizens Award of in recognition of Amir Abdur-Rahim. Just take us through the men's basketball program, how they've been doing, and the decision to have a award in his name.
Yeah, obviously it's been a tremendously hard fall for this whole program, this whole community, and certainly for the family itself. And so we're all kind of dealing with it in our own ways. But I do think most, beyond the family itself, it is his basketball family that he helped create. And I think they've held up remarkably well. They've been extremely resilient. They've been extremely great representatives and continue to play hard and play well. And, we've had a really challenging schedule right now. They've won the games they should. They've been right in the middle of games. I think they gave Florida the best game that they've had. They went toe-to-toe at Loyola Chicago. They played a admirable game at Utah State this past weekend. So to me, it's like, how do we keep getting better and getting ready for this conference play, which kind of falls pretty similar to the path we ran last year, right? We were about in the same spot, ironically. Right. And so now we got to get better over this next couple of weeks when we have a chance to practice and be together and get ready for this conference play, which seems to be a wide open league, and that's what we want to go ahead and do again. So I'm proud of them. I think Coach Fletcher's kept them together extremely well. The staff's working hard, but they put the priorities first, right? You got to make sure these young men are cared for, that we're giving them the space and the respect that they need. But they're playing hard. I think it's just a matter of continuing to play together and continue to learn each other and go forward to the conference play with the best rotations available and the best best focus on making sure we can challenge for this conference title. So I feel very confident going into conference play, and I'm very proud of them. But I'm mostly proud of them because the way they've stuck together, the way they've celebrated his honor. And when you look at Amir, there's been we said it before, but it just kind of shows just how special it was. It's hard to process when you just think, wow, he was only here for one season. And the impact he made was almost similar to someone that might have been here for 30 seasons, right?
Right. Decades. Yep.
It was one season, it was one championship, but the fact that he, as we've talked about, collaborated, embraced the entire campus community. He cared about the Tampa Bay community. Everything was electric, as you well know better than anyone, about at the Angling Center, even heading into the NIT last year. So he brought this community together. It would be a shame for us not all to stay together because of it, and to not kind of celebrate what he did for this program and to continue it forward as we head into conference play. So, we've named the student section after him. The conference office is doing special dedications. You saw pretty much every arena in college basketball do something in Amir's honor. And then just this past weekend, as you alluded to, the university, through President Law's leadership, gave what's in essence the highest award that the university president can bestow on someone from being the community Citizens Award, and that was given posthumously to Amir, that his wife and family accepted. So that's a big deal. It's not likely. Think about it. It's hard to imagine a one-year basketball coach be given the highest award in a university, but it's totally fitting because of what he did, not just on the basketball court, because it wasn't given for that. It's because the way he just galvanized the student body and the whole university that made it a really point of pride for the University of South Florida.
Yeah, and like you said, we're in the memory making business, and it's crazy that in 1 year, Coach Amir Abdur-Rahim made that many memories on our community.
That's probably the biggest thing, besides being sad about missing my friend, is thinking about that. Like, that was 1 year.
Yeah,
he did all that in 1 year. Seems like it's unbelievable.
Yeah, man. The one and only Michael Kelly, VP of Athletics over at USF. MK, appreciate your support over the years. You're doing such a great job. You're the right man at the helm to usher us into a new, era of USF Athletics. So thank you so much for your time. Safe travels to Hawaii. Make sure you pack some sunscreen, and have a great holiday. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jay. Best luck to you. Look forward to seeing you at the Angling Center soon.
Thanks, buddy. The one and only Michael Kelly, USF Athletics. Right guy, right spot. You want to talk about a guy who's got his mind and the perspective and the look and he knows where everything is going, and he's making all the right decisions. He's checking off all the boxes, crossing the T's, dotting the I's. We are very lucky to have him here in the Tampa Bay area, as we are lucky to have our guy, David Deacon Schiele, on the program. 10 Tampa Bay. He's got is that a personalized Schiele Falcons jersey, number 10?
It is. It is a personalized Schiele Falcons jersey. I got that in the 7th grade. I saved up birthday allowance, Christmas money, and I was like, I want a custom Falcons jersey with my last name on it. And I saved up and I got it. And so I figured when I set up this man cave, I was like, if I have that above my head, I guess branding wise, it makes sense.
I have so many jerseys with Recher 10 on the back. I knew that's why we were friends. And
Yep.
I copped a Michael Vick jersey.
Yes, sir.
When it came out, that same jersey, and it was my favorite football jersey of all time. My little brother stole it as I got older, but it was just the smoothest looking jersey ever. And of course, in my mind, one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever. He may not go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, right? But when you talk about most entertaining quarterbacks, he's top
For
five.
sure.
I mean, just the ability to run. I mean, it was almost like he was skating on the ice, and he would just flick of the wrist, whether it was at the Falcons or the Eagles. He was that guy was, I think he was created in a lab, I think, somewhere.
Yeah, man. Growing up in Atlanta, getting to have him as the quarterback of the local team was just it was mind blowing. He's the reason I got into football. I remember sitting in my mom's car. We actually had a setup where we could plug in this little TV. and his famous run to win it in overtime against the Vikings happened while we were sitting in the car.
Wow.
And at that moment, it was like, oh yeah, I was locked in from that moment on. So I mean, I've just been I'm a Falcons fan covering the Bucs, but I mean, when you're a Falcons fan, you just have to be realistic and be like, yeah, this team stinks right now. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm confident that they're going to beat the Raiders. Like, it's a Desmond Ridder revenge game. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? And with what happened with the Bucs in LA, I think this division is wrapped up. And I said this weeks ago when the Bucs were on a bye that this division was not over and that Tampa Bay had a chance to come win it. And now we're actually seeing it play out. And I just, I'm sitting here like, man, I was right. I don't get no cookies for that. That's just part of the job. But I saw it coming.
We'll get into the Bucs in a second. Let's stay on the Falcons then. What's been the biggest reason for the downturn of their play? I know everybody's going to look and say it's Kirk Cousins and his inability to be able to not throw interceptions and to throw touchdowns and to get Kyle Pitts involved. But is it deeper than that, or is it just strictly the guy under center?
It is deeper than that, but you can't ignore how bad Kirk Cousins has been. Like, you can't ignore that, right? The last time someone had a streak of, I think, 8+ interceptions and no touchdowns over the course of a month was like 2005 when Brett Favre did it, which, that's kind of what he was known for. He was just going to throw it up there and the other team was probably going to come down with it. But at least Brett Favre can turn around and say, man, I got a Super Bowl, right? Kirk Cousins doesn't have that. So for Kirk, I'm not going to blame Kirk so much big picture wise, because here he is on getting closer to 40, and the Falcons paid him all of this money as if he was this young guy who's just was like spurned by the team that drafted him, and he still got a lot of juice left in the tank. That was not the case. Like, it wasn't the case. And so you look at big picture wise, and you just see roster mismanagement from the general manager, Terry Fontenot. And it's been that way since he first got the job. The first thing he did was draft a tight end at 4. Kyle Pitts is a bust. Like, he's considered a bust now. He had 1,000 yards in his rookie season, but since then he hasn't really done anything. He's being accused of laziness on his routes. You see them completely neglect to add a pass rusher through the draft. You see them neglect to add to the secondary through the draft. There are so many things that they have not done. And when you look at the drafting styles of the Buccaneers, just because obviously by covering them, I'm seeing both sides. Right. I'm seeing what actually taking care of your roster looks like versus just going out there and being like, oh, let's just throw darts at a name and then try to explain to people why taking best player available made sense, even though ultimately it really doesn't. And so for Atlanta to have been 6-3, they're very fortunate to be 6-3, but that model that they've been running was never sustainable. And if they lose to the Raiders, then heads are definitely going to roll. And no matter what happens at the end of the season, I think this division belongs to Tampa Bay. The Falcons are going to miss the playoffs again, whether they win 9 games or 10 games. And it's a winning season, but you're going to have to make some changes in that front office.
So what do you make of the job done by Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson, the head coach and the OC?
Yeah, it's been okay. Like, it's been pretty good. I think Raheem Morris he's such a player's coach. I've always liked his energy ever since he was a head coach of the Buccaneers. I liked his energy. And I said, man, it'd be really cool to have that guy as head coach. And now he's a head coach of the Falcons, and it's going like, it's okay. What I don't appreciate is the playing in people's faces and the hard-headedness that we've seen from top down. Like, it's just been that way for a long time. And basically playing in the faces of reporters, you're playing in the faces of fans, and you're saying Kirk Cousins right now is the same guy we saw pass for 509 on that Thursday night. And it is very clearly not the same guy. It's not the same guy. This is not the same team. And if you're trying to tell me that who we saw from Tampa Bay when they were 4-6 is who they are after yesterday, that's not true. So like, you just have to be honest about it. And really, I wouldn't throw Michael Penix in right now, only because I think you would really mess him up. Like, we saw this same thing play out with Desmond Ridder. Not saying Desmond Ridder and Michael Penix are on the same level, but Atlanta failed to play Mike in the preseason. Why? He's your backup. He's not going to get any other reps. You got to give him some game reps. If you give him his first live action, real game reps, like meaningful game reps, late in a season when you're trying to like salvage something, you could really mess this guy up. They should have just played him in the preseason. So that's on Raheem Morris for not playing him and just sitting there and throwing out third string quarterbacks. And it's just like, it's legitimately roster mismanagement. It's like they're just playing around and they're like, yeah, we'll just do some things and see how it goes. And that's why I call them an unserious franchise on the air all the time. Mm-hmm. It's unserious.
Yeah, and I wonder too, like I know so many people that love Raheem as a human being, right?
Sure.
And they say like, oh, he's done well as an assistant coach. He had a good year with the Buccaneers. But I just look at it, it comes down, it's just like a quarterback, it comes down to decision making. And I look at some of the things in late game situations, and I look at some of the decisions that he makes as a head coach, and I'm just like, being a good guy is only going to take you so far, because eventually you get to a point where it's just like you constantly make the wrong decision. Your roster mismanagement, your game management is going to end up biting you in the ass. I don't think he's at any risk of losing his job, but I'm sure that the seat gets warmer for him the worse that they play down the stretch.
Yeah, and look, Atlanta came into the season, they had cap room. You've got a new head coach, you've got cap space, you've got a top 10 draft pick, and you really look like you can start sort of fresh, right? You can start sort of fresh. Well, you go out, you get Kirk Cousins. Okay. And also you tampered to do it, so that cost you a little bit. And then you draft Michael Penix, and you're like, well, this is for the future. And then Kirk is for now. And you're trying to like PR spin it in a way that it makes sense. However, if Kirk plays the way you think he's going to play, because you're paying him this much money in order, like you're paying him 180 mil. So you're paying him to be an elite quarterback. If he plays like an elite quarterback for 3 to 4 years, that's the entirety of Michael Penix's rookie deal. Right. So like, what are you talking about? You have no future. You don't have one. It doesn't really make sense. If you just wanted somebody to plug in the gap for a little bit while you build and get Michael ready, then you could have gotten somebody else. You didn't have to go get Kirk Cousins. But if you were so bought in on Kirk Cousins is going to be our new franchise quarterback, we haven't had one since Matt Ryan, we're going to have to get a guy in here. Okay, great. Then you need to commit to building a team around him. So even if Kirk isn't the guy, right, at least you started building pieces around him to where you now are a quarterback away. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they didn't do that.
Or they could have, instead of getting Cousins, if they were going to draft Penix, go get a Flacco, go get a Jameis, go get somebody like that. That's a bridge guy that'll give you a year or two. And maybe after 6 games, like we saw with the Giants with Kurt Warner, play 6 games and bring Eli in, right? Like we see this in other situations, right? You have a guy, you draft him, you're like, all right, it just seems like the planning has been very poor. I want to ask you about the planning for the Buccaneers in that game yesterday against the Chargers. A 40 spot, a 40 burger, a 40-piece nugget on top of the head of Jim Harbaugh on the Chargers. What was the one thing that stood out to you the most about that Buccaneers victory?
Man, there was so much. I mean, it's hard to pick out one thing because of how impressive it was on both sides of the ball. Now, it didn't start that impressive for the defense, but they were able to really lock in. Todd Bowles talked so much after the game about how at halftime they were like, all right, look, we're going to have to lock in the second half. We're going to have to shut things down. And they did. Jamel Dean gets the first interception against Herbert since week 2. You know, like you see Tampa Bay really starting to put together a complete game as a team. Usually it was like the offense having to pick up the defense, or like in Carolina, the defense had to pick up for the offense. This was a complete effort against a good team. That's why I'm saying this might be the most impressive win of the season. And what gives it the edge over the win in Detroit is the fact that we know everybody is not 100%. There are injuries, and they were able to overcome, and they put up 40 on the top scoring defense in the NFL. And Harbaugh teams don't give up 500 yards. Like they just, it's only happened, I think, 3 times, with Sunday being the 3rd time. So everything was so impressive. Jack Browning got a day off. So you don't have to punt. And there's so many things that are impressive. And now you have national media members saying, wait a minute, this Buccaneers team might be pretty serious. You know, the last couple of years, they've just kind of survived the South. and just kind of settled into that 4 seed. They have a legitimate shot at the 3 seed now. So this isn't just a look, they're just better than everybody else in the South, and they're going to kind of fall into the 4 seed and go into the playoffs. No, this team could win 11 games and host a game as a 3 seed in the playoffs.
Where do you think they stack up right now in the NFC hierarchy? Or are they top 3, top 5? Like I know if they win the division, they'll obviously get one of the top 4, but do you have them above the Lions? Do you have them slightly below the Lions? Because I think the consensus right now is probably Philly on that 10-game winning streak is probably number 1, but where do you have Tampa Bay in kind of that pecking order?
Yeah, this is so interesting. I'm glad this is not college football because the Bucs beat the Eagles and they beat the Lions. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad we're not in a college football system where you got to try to figure out how to stack these teams up based on, who beat who and who lost to who. But right now, honestly, I mean, you look at it and the Bucs after yesterday have to be right behind the Lions and the Eagles, even though they have already beaten those teams. What those teams have done and the streaks that they've gone on is really impressive. I'm not here to say Tampa Bay would lose a rematch with Detroit or would lose a rematch with Philly. I think they could still beat those teams if they were to play again, especially if they're at full health. If they can get Antoine Winfield Jr. back and then Jordan Whitehead, I know it's going to be a little bit before he comes back, but if that team can get its pieces back and they really are at full health, sans Chris Godwin, yeah, I mean they've got a shot to beat anybody in the NFC. But right now, after watching Tampa Bay yesterday and then watching Seattle last night, it's really hard not to put Tampa Bay right behind the Lions and the Eagles, just based on, what we've seen lately.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I was going to ask you some Ray stuff next, but we're going to move on to the more important topic at hand. Do you have is that my little eye, is that a rated R superstar spinner belt?
That is the rated R spinner belt, man. I became a kid with adult money a few years ago, and I was like, dude, I've been eyeing this spinner belt for a long time.
Not a John Cena spinner belt, a rated R superstar.
It's the rated R one. Now I know it's not the one. It's not the one Edge designed. It's not the one he designed. He designed a whole belt, and they was like, we're just gonna slap your logo on the spinner. And I get that. However, when it was revealed on that episode of Monday Night Raw, Lita threw the original spinner into the lake, and then Edge revealed the rated R spinner. Dude, I mean, this belt's sick. It is that's a sick looking belt. And every time I bring it to a show, it draws attention. Every time.
That's my buddy had a Smoking Skulls Stone Cold belt, and he sold it at WrestleMania years ago because not many people had like one of the authentic big gold plated one, old school Stone Cold. It looked like my friend's whole shoulder disappeared. Saturday night's main event, Nassau Coliseum, the throwback, Jesse the Body Ventura. You get the blue shirts with the bow ties to the referees. No big swerves, no big title changes. We know Chelsea Green wins the U.S. championship, but Rock doesn't show up. No big bloodline kind of involvement. Let down, or just are we spoiled because we're used to, all these big swerves and all these big surprises at the end of shows?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of the hardcore wrestling fan being a little bit upset after being spoiled. And to be honest, there's a reason we think that way, and it's because WWE's been cooking this year.
Yeah,
they have really been cooking. It's hard for me to find a consistent string of stories that I just flat out didn't care about. Just about everything has been good. You go from what's going on with Chelsea Green winning the Women's United States Championship. Super happy for her. You look at that story. The feud she had with Michin was cool. I love what they're doing with Tiffany Stratton. They're basically putting her over, and dude, when she cashes in, the ovation is going to be epic. Right. I know it is. The pop's going to be epic. You go from that, then you had the Carmelo and Andrade 7-game series or 7-match series, however you want to put it, all the way up into what we've seen with the Bloodline. They've just been cooking from top to bottom. So I understand, hey, NBC, this is going to be a big deal. You've got the casuals watching. You've got people who haven't watched wrestling in decades tuning in just because, oh, wow, wrestling's on. I want to check it out. Mm-hmm. I think we have to remember WWE is a brand. They are all about branding. So they're not trying to just give you this hardcore, wrestling show with just, oh, swerve here, surprise here, boom, this and that. They were trying to showcase the best of the best. That's why there were so many title matches. That's why they let everybody cook for a little bit. We got 2 hours of really solid wrestling. That's what we got. We got 2 hours of solid wrestling. It was a good display, and it was purposeful for them to have Kevin Owens attack Cody Rhodes after the show. That was intentional because the hardcore fan is going to be on socials and looking for that stuff to continue that storyline. But if you're a casual watching, you're going to be like, I saw this guy, Cody Rhodes. I remember Dusty Rhodes. I think that's his, that was his dad. He won, but then he got attacked and he was stretchered out. Like, that's how you would end a Monday Night Raw.
Right.
But that's not how you would end a Saturday night's main event. So overall, I think they played their cards right. Like, there's no need to add in all this extra stuff. Like, say, like the hardcore fan, I know that's what you want. But you got to remember, Saturday night's main event is on NBC, so the casual fan can become hardcore, and the new viewer can become casual. Saturday night's main event is how I became a hardcore fan. Years ago, or I guess 17 years ago, it's been now, I saw Randy Orton RKO John Cena through a steel chair. And I was like, yo, and that was on Saturday night's main event. And I was like, yeah, I got to see this Randy guy get what's deserved, because that was messed up. And of course, that set up the whole thing with John Cena, getting injured, coming back at the Royal Rumble in 2008, which led up to WrestleMania 24. I mean, that's what it is, dude. That's what the event is about. So I liked it.
Yeah, it's a great point that you bring up, because who are you swerving?
Right.
You can't swerve people that don't watch all the time, because they're going to be like, oh, that's how am I supposed to be surprised by that? And
it's not
surprised. It's not. For people that said that just Saturday night's main event was just another PLE, it's not. It's not, because the PLE, those are the people that are tuning into Peacock. Those are the people that want to go and to be able to watch this stuff, and that kind of follow across the storyline. So the more and more we got closer to the date, I was expecting less of a swerve and more of a traditional, just wrestling show. And for all the people that say like, oh, if you want to watch real wrestling, go to AEW. I don't think that's, I think it's, you couldn't be farther from the truth when you have some of the guys that they have in there. I mean, yeah, they do storylines. Yeah, they do incredible mic work, but you can't tell me some of these incredible wrestlers and these performers in their ring are just, second rate, right? I couldn't disagree with that sentiment more. Where do we go next with the bloodline, though, I think is a huge aspect of this. I am a little surprised that we haven't seen The Rock at all. I thought we were going to see him at Survivor Series just at the end, maybe up on the Titantron, maybe just, going out there and giving somebody a stare. Where do you think we go next? Is it an introduction of maybe a new member? Is it somebody turning? Does Drew McIntyre now get involved? Because it seems like he's beefing with everybody. What do you think is the next step, the next progression of the storyline of the bloodline?
Yeah, I really don't know. I think they've had to change some things because of the legit injuries that took place at War Games. And you know how it is, Jay. In wrestling, you got to book backwards. So they know how it ends. And then all you got to do is write, okay, well, here's where we are now. Here's where we want to go. How do we get there? And you put the start and the end in pen. Everything else is in pencil.
Right.
So I think they're still erasing and writing stuff as we speak, trying to figure out where to go. I don't know, but I can tell you this right now. January the 6th on Netflix, when Roman Reigns goes against Solo Sikoa for the right to truly be the tribal chief, that's when The Rock is probably going to show up. Yeah. That it has to be, right? Like you're moving to Netflix. John Cena is going to be there. The Rock's got to be there. Like you got to pull out all the stops, right? Again, we're talking about branding. We're talking about how to like really sell something to keep people coming back week after week after week. You got to really hammer that home. So that's probably when we see The Rock. Now, here's my thing, and I was just talking to a coworker about this. When you're doing tribal combat, I vividly remember them saying in tribal combat, you cannot be interrupted. Like that's like it's disrespectful.
Right.
To interrupt tribal combat. Okay, well, literally at SummerSlam a year ago, Jimmy interrupted the match with Jay and Roman. Yeah. And I was like, that breaks the rules. Yeah. So like, are you going to follow it this time? Or are we you just want us to forget that was ever said? Like that was never canon. Like, so that's my only thing. Like, where does The Rock play into it? Because if it's tribal combat, he can't really interrupt the match. However, they've already done an interruption of that. And, if he comes out before, after, I don't know. But I do know January the 6th, on Netflix, that's gotta be when The Rock shows up and they start building towards Mania, which I think should absolutely be Rock and Roman.
So then what's Royal Rumble then? Rock and Cody? So right?
Yeah, because that's
he wants his
what it's
pound of
shaping up
flesh
to be.
there.
Yeah, that's what it's shaping up to be. You're probably gonna have The Rock and Cody. Cody's gonna go over. Like, this isn't 2013, 2014 anymore. So Cody should win that match. What my issue is don't neglect Cody's WrestleMania build as a champion because you're so focused on Roman and Rock. So if they try to muddy the water too much with Cody and The Rock, let's not forget that the seeds were planted for WrestleMania with Cody. Well, really at the previous WrestleMania, but at the Royal Rumble at Tropicana Field, those seeds were already planted. And then of course that build all the way up to night 2, which was just, that was cinema. That was perfect cinema.
So sorry to interrupt you. So it looks like we're heading on a crash course for CM Punk and Seth Rollins to probably fight at WrestleMania.
100%.
Probably for the title. That'll be the favor, whatever.
Yeah.
Rock and Roman. So Cody, it's got to be one of two people. It's either Randy Orton or John Cena, right? I mean, that's got to be the two.
Exactly.
What is the better outcome, or what do you think is the more likely outcome of the two?
Honestly, man, personally, I would like to see it go to Randy. Mm-hmm. Randy and Cody had a WrestleMania match. Now, it was a triple threat, but they've had a WrestleMania match. We know Cody as someone who can be taken seriously in the ring, partly because of Randy Orton. Legacy was one of the better factions, and it doesn't get a lot of credit. It really doesn't get a lot of credit, but that was a really good faction. And I liked what Cody was able to do while part of that group. And his first run in WWE wasn't the same when that group broke up. It just wasn't. So look, Randy's one of your mentors. And when you let Randy cook as a heel, it's really good. His heel run, and when they were locked down and they were in the PC or they were in the Thunderdome, whatever, that was some of his best work. Not his best heel work ever. I think Bald Randy's the best heel, but that was some of his best work as a heel, 100%. I think if you let him tap into that, you set that up, I like that.
I don't know if you can ever. I think there's certain points of wrestlers' careers where there's no turning back. I don't think you can get him to be that heel because there's always going to be that underlying respect for Randy Orton. Like, nobody I've seen it all. I saw him kiss Stephanie. I saw him punt John Cena's dad. I saw every iteration of Randy Orton there is, right?
Yeah, I saw it too. Yeah.
But I don't know if you can ever get him to be that devilish heel. And I think now with seeing some people cheering Kevin Owens doing what he did to Cody, I think it's going to be flipped. I think Cody is going to be, I think somehow, some way, it's going to be him as the heel and either Cena and Orton as the babyface.
Well, well, so if Cena's involved, then there's only one role Cena can play.
Right.
Like, there's only one role he's playing. I mean, that's tough. And we've heard Cody talk about, the full effect of what a heel turn would mean for him and the company as a whole. That's why it's not just so easy to do that, to where we mentioned AEW. AEW is so niche. Like, it's just like you have somebody just booking things because like, oh yeah, let me just book it. AEW is not really concerned about their branding like WWE is. They're not.
It's more of it's an elevated independent show, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it is what it is. It's a good alternative. There's some good wrestlers there, but I don't even compare the two between AEW and WWE. It's not the same because that's it's a promotion, right?
Yeah.
The WWE is a brand. They're a business. They're traded. Like, it's totally different. When you that's why I think for this Cody Rhodes thing, I'm glad we're going down here. He couldn't do that with AEW because he was the booker. Then he did this thing. If he loses, he can never challenge for the championship. There was always that push and pull. He threw his weight belt and they threw it back. Like, now there's got to be some like planting the seeds of a baby face before you become a heel. And I think vice versa, you want to cheer for a long time heel too, because you like to see the different sides of the guy. But I think we're starting to see it. He just hit crossroads on Kevin Owens on the chair. That's a heel move to win Saturday night's main event. So I think it'll be easier for him. And as much as he'll say about like, oh, the business side of it, I get that. But you're not John Cena, right? Like it's still like we're still in the infancy of him coming back and not being Dashing Cody Rhodes, not being Stardust, not being part of Legacy. Like this is a different iteration of Cody Rhodes altogether. And I think if he turns heel, A, I don't think it'll be that hard. And B, I think people will buy it because people like to see different sides. It's almost like what we saw from Randy 10, 15 years ago. We were cool cheering for babyface Randy, but we were also cool chilling, heel Randy because he did some devilish ass things. I think that's where Cody is. And I think it just makes more sense and it gives them more options if he starts moving in that direction of being a heel character.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. And it also kind of reminded me of Drew McIntyre's run when he first came back.
Right.
Super over. I think about the moment he gave the kick to Brock on the stage and picked up the belt. He wasn't champion yet.
Right.
And he picked
Brock
up that
told
belt.
Him to pick up. Brock told him to pick up the belt.
Brock told him, hey, he was like, pick up the belt. He picked it up and everyone goes nuts, right? Claymore on the stage, pick up the belt. You're not champion yet. And Drew has a similar type of story. Didn't work out the first time. He left, got a little bigger, got a little hair on his chest, comes back. And it kind of reminds me of that. But slowly you started to see kind of that heel turn coming for Drew. And he's been cooking as a heel. He's been cooking, dude. And it's been really, really good work. It's been fantastic work. I like the move to have him beat Sammy. That's great. You need that. He needs wins like that. I thought his Hell in a Cell match with CM Punk was awesome. Did not make him look weak at all in that loss. So, yeah, dude, I don't necessarily disagree with what you said about Cody. How do you do it? Because if you're focusing on The Rock and Cody and you're trying so much to build towards that, you talked about planting seeds. You got to actually make it work. Like you have to make it work. Don't rush it. That's the whole thing. I'm not a booker, so I don't know how they would do that. But if that's your endpoint, remember you got to work backwards. But you've got something kind of in pen here with Cody and Rock that you need to work around. So that's where I'm going to be interested in seeing. Okay, how do you maneuver now? Storyline wise, how do you maneuver now? Especially because now we're in an era where everything is connected. All of these stories are connected to each other in some form or fashion, and everything is bloodline related, basically. So, that's kind of my interest point, and I'm gonna watch. I'm a fan. Yeah. I'm gonna watch anyway.
I'm with you, and I wonder. You said pen and pencil. I wonder if Rock and Cody is not written in pen. Maybe it's one of those things. Remember, he brought him in close and he whispered in his ear. Maybe the way to make him an ultimate heel is by Cody turning on Roman or doing something to help The Rock, right? Maybe Cody does something because it has to be dastardly, right? Eventually, it's got to be like a full thing. You can't you tiptoe, you kind of plant the seed, but then it's just got to be whoop. There you go. You're going to be the champion. You're going to be that guy. Real quick before I let you go, I was thinking about this the other day. I would love to see somehow, some way, Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, and Drew McIntyre get together and kind of commiserate in some way. We're against Roman. I can't believe all these people turned against them. We have our differences, but the three of us, almost like we saw when, who was it? Like Drew Corbin and Lashley or Drew Corbin and Ziggler or something like that a couple of years ago when it was just like-minded heels got together. I mean, think about that three-way, right? Like with those three guys going up against a bunch of different players with Rollins, Drew McIntyre, and Kevin Owens, because they all got beef with the bloodline for one reason or another.
Yeah, man. That'd be interesting because you have very strong characters there individually. When you put them all together, I do wonder how you would do that. That's going to be interesting. I think it's been all
Punk, Jay, and Roman are.
Oh my gosh,
Jay and Roman against Seth, Drew, and KO.
Yeah, bro. That'd
be
man.
Badass. We're fantasy
cool.
booking. We're not bookers, but we we're
not
bookers,
man,
but we'll try to be
turn on. We got to turn on WWE 2K24 to go ahead and try to see how that's gonna look.
Because
ain't no way we have the power to book that.
They're not ready for Deacon and Jay talking WWE. Check him out on all social media. Deacon_Schiele. He's got a lot of great stuff going on. 10 Tampa Bay guys do an unbelievable job. And check out Game Day Grace as well. Really love what you're doing with that. Kind of looking at the faith side of not just sports, but just everything involved with the media side. So thank you so much for your time, my brother. Always great talking to you. We could have probably done this for another 2 hours, but keep up the great work. Give my love to everybody over there at 10 Tampa Bay, and I'll see you down the road somewhere covering our Tampa Bay teams here in the Bay Area.
All right, man. Be easy.
All right. One and only David Schiele. Appreciate you. Good stuff there, man. We get in, there's certain people that you hang out with in your life and you have a 2-minute conversation, turns into 20-minute conversations. That's David. That's me and him. Wherever we are, where I'll be at a game, we'll talk wrestling, we'll talk sports, we'll talk anything. That's why we're here on the program, the Recher podcast. That's the type of guests that we have here on the program. My friends, my coaches and players and people in the organizations all over that always bring the heat and always have a good conversation. And we touch on a little bit of everything here on the program. You know how it rolls here on the Recher podcast. It is not just, all right, we're only going to talk football. We're only going to talk about college. It's everything. We're going to touch on NFL, college, hoops, baseball, hockey, WWE, UFC. If it is going on in the Tampa Bay area and abroad, we are going to be here and we are going to be talking about it on the Recher podcast. Just a real quick reminder, no show on Friday, traveling to New York, be up there for the holidays. We will have a show next Monday. And next Monday for, I want to say the 7th straight year, it is going to be the top 20 sports stars of Tampa Bay. We've been doing it, whether it was on air on DAE, whether it was on social media, but I'm going to do it right here on the Recher podcast a week from today. The text messages are going to go out a little bit today where we rank the top 20 sports stars in the Tampa Bay area. It's not just players. It's not just coaches. It could be front office members. It could be former players or coaches in the Tampa Bay area. We've seen Tony Dungy. We've seen Joe Madden make the list. We've seen guys like Jeff Innick make the list. So cannot wait for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Saturday night's main event. We just touched on that. UFC fight night at Amalie Arena. Some really, really good fights there. The main event was stopped. Buckley Covington, really cool to see Colby Covington come into the ring with Hulk Hogan on one side and Chael Sonnen on the other. He is WWE. That's just Colby Covington for you, man. He ended up losing. Buckley looks strong. Stand up wrestling. I don't know how many really big time fights that Colby has left. I think he's certainly on the downside of his career. We certainly have to look at a different direction when it comes to the hierarchy of the welterweight division. But the big fight that a lot of us were looking at was the co-main event between Cub Swanson and our guy Billy Quarantillo. What a scrap. These guys were throwing bombs. Unfortunately, our guy Billy Q got knocked out in the 3rd round by Cub Swanson, but we got to show love to Billy Q, right? Our guy Billy Q, we love him. His headband is on the chair over there. I'm not going to go get it, but we love you, Billy Q. You were in there throwing down with a guy that's 41 years old. That's been around for a really long time. We were supporting our guy, Billy Quarantillo, who unfortunately came up on the wrong end of that one. But yeah, never a dull moment when he's in the octagon throwing a leather. Also from this weekend, the Heisman Trophy winner was announced, and it was Colorado two-way star Travis Hunter. And as I'm watching the entire ceremony take place in New York and seeing all of the Heisman Trophy winners on the stage, I think back to what a lot of people said about Deion Sanders and what a lot of people said about the Colorado Buffaloes program over the last 18 to 24 months, and how many people got it wrong. How many people thought it was going to be a dumpster fire? How many people out there thought they were just going to crash and burn? Yeah, year 1, it wasn't great. Markedly better in year 2. They were entertaining to watch. They went into the transfer portal and beefed up both sides of the trenches. They played some good football this year. Shedeur Sanders is going to be a top 5 pick in the upcoming NFL draft, and so is his buddy, Travis Hunter, the two-way star from Colorado that ended up winning the Heisman Trophy. So for all those people that thought that Deion Sanders was just going over there for himself and he wasn't going to be able to make an impact over there and he wasn't going to put these kids in a position to succeed, he's going to have 2 of the top 5 players in the NFL draft this upcoming year. And I heard a lot of people talking smack about Deion, talking smack about Colorado, and I haven't heard nearly as many people saying, you know what? I was wrong. Okay, maybe they're not vying for a Big 12 championship quite yet, but you can't tell me that what Deion is doing over there hasn't been a success so far. Every single time you see Colorado's playing, you're going to tune in. You're definitely going to tune in. And it's not just because of the coaches on the sideline or the celebrities on the sideline. It's because the team has gotten they've gotten way better in just 2 years. From one of the worst teams in college football to a team that was just a kind of a sniff from being in the Big 12 championship game. And when you listen to Travis Hunter speak during the Heisman Trophy presentation, man, how great was that? That is a kid that was up there speaking from the heart. It wasn't some, script that somebody wrote for him. It wasn't something that was disingenuous. It wasn't something that you could tell he didn't want to say. Everything that he articulated on that stage was so genuine and so honest and from the heart. That young man's going to be successful in whatever he does. And Deion said it himself. This isn't a guy that's going out there partying, drinking, and smoking. He plays football. He goes home. He plays video games. He loves to fish. And for all the smack talk about Travis and Shedeur and Deion, just make sure that your praise is as loud as the disrespect. Because what they've done in Colorado has been incredible. And Deion he's put these two kids in a position to be successful NFL players. And it's not just because they're linked with Deion. It's because they've been coached up and they seem like they have a really good head on their shoulders. So I'm really excited to see what the future holds for Shedeur and Travis. And I really think there's a lot of people out there that owe them a huge apology. All right, let's finish the show the only way we know how, with the closer, the Mariano Rivera of the program today, the one and only Greg Wolf, host of all things Tampa Bay, street-laced. If there's something going on in the Tampa Bay area and Greg Wolf or Titus O'Neil or Sonia Bryson Kirksey or Jay Recher are not there, you're probably not in the right area. Gee, what is going on?
What up? Thank you for that gracious introduction, man. That was spot on. Thank you.
Tampa Bay Sun with a big win yesterday, huh?
Yeah,
nice.
Dude, that was a great game, man. I'll be honest with you. It's been a learning curve here in the inaugural fall season for the ladies. But again, they're improving, and I think it takes a little while, as we've learned with our Tampa Bay Lightning, when you add new pieces to the puzzle. In this case, putting together a team from scratch. It takes a little while to get continuity. That's with any sporting event, right? So I think overall the consensus for this inaugural fall season for the ladies is it's been a success. They're right in the middle of the pack. It's kind of where you want to be. At least you don't want to be in the bottom of the pack. You want to be in the top. And so they're kind of right there at the cusp. And, a huge 3-2 victory over Spokane on Saturday. And, Tosh Flint had 2 goals in 3 minutes. I mean, it was an exciting environment. It was our holiday game. So the vibes were great. I think the organization's done a great job of creating that environment at Blake High School there and have really kind of made it their own. It's a great place to watch a sporting event and to finally have a professional women's team in our city. Obviously we've been watching USF basketball, women's basketball with Coach Fernandez for all these years, but it's just a great option to see, to have another avenue, another sporting league in our city. And for females, for women, for young girls now to have a team to look up to and be like, wow, I can actually have the opportunity to play as a professional in my home city. I think it's going to be great for recruiting. I think it's going to be great for USF soccer. And I just think it all culminates that whole Tampa Bay mentality. So it's been fun, man. And I can't wait. The spring season starts in February 8th, actually, is when the spring season will kick off. We take on Fort Lauderdale. So that's really not that far away, a handful of weeks. So I'm excited to see how they translate the energy over to the spring season and see if they can make that push to the playoffs, which, this will be an exciting time to see that here in Tampa Bay as well.
You got that right, buddy. What's your week been like, USF? You got the Tampa Bay Sun. It's a little bit of everything, man.
Yeah,
never a
man,
dull moment in the life of Greg Wolf.
It is. It's been pretty awesome to have, basketball overlapping football, overlapping soccer, overlapping hockey. It's absolutely been a first. The men's basketball squad, I think, again, it's been a roller coaster of a season already. The emotions, the highs, the lows, but I think more so the highs. I feel like the USF men's basketball team under Coach Ben Fletcher, I think the boys have rallied. I think they're still learning themselves, but to see the moments of brilliance that they've had so far this season, competing with some of the best teams in the country, obviously falling a little short in some of those games, but it's progression. And obviously you want to get better as the season goes on, and I feel like they're getting better. It's great to see that we finally have some big men in the paint, which has always been, I feel like, our Achilles heel. We've always had perimeter shooters and guys that can do the damn thing, but it's just really amazing to see what AAR laid as a foundation, and that these boys have rallied around the situation. And I think they're only going to get better as the season progresses. Same thing with the women. They've had tough battles. South Carolina, third best team in the country, but they held their own last night. Like they never gave up. That's the one thing I will say about our USF squads. They never give up, and they have heart. So we're still in the very early stages of both of those seasons. So still a lot of basketball left to play. But we do have some games coming up. I know we actually have a game on New Year's Eve, like the New Year's Eve day, and then we have a game on New Year's Day as well. Street Lace, we're highly involved with the Gasparilla Bowl coming up.
Yeah.
This week. Huge battle between the Florida Gators and Tulane at Raymond James Stadium. Shouts to Scott Glazier and Jennifer Wagner and the whole crew putting on another great bowl event in our city. I'll be hosting that. Actually, I'll be hosting a couple different things leading up to Gasparilla Bowl. We have a pep rally that's going to be happening on Thursday prior to the Lightning game, right across the street at the Sail Pavilion. That's kind of like, the battle of the bands, the cheer squads, just kind of really to get the teams and the fans hyped up for the game that's happening on Friday. So I'll be over at Sail Pavilion around 4:00 on Thursday for that pep rally over there, and then heading over to Lightning Hockey. My buddy DJ MC White, he'll be DJing the game as well. And we'll be also in the pregame tailgate at Ray J on Friday before the game. And then we're also involved with the Rely Quest Bowl, another huge battle coming here to Tampa. We all know the Rely Quest Bowl, formerly the Outback Bowl, used to be on New Year's Day, but this year it's on New Year's Eve. So I'll be hosting the Rely Quest Bowl parade in Ybor City, which is always an epic event. If you've never attended the parade, it becomes legitimately a battle of the bands, and not just like, they play, we play. They come down 7th Avenue, right? And they literally stop right in front of Centro Ybor, and it is like, we battle, you battle, the cheer squads. It's awesome. It is an amazing spectacle. And then to have University of Michigan and Alabama's bands and their squad, it's going to be pandemonium in Ybor. So I'm looking forward to that. That's actually happening on my birthday, December 30th. So I've chosen to work on my birthday instead of hanging out and doing the damn thing. So it's a busy time of the year. Like most people are unwinding now and taking time off of work. But in sports and entertainment, this is our bread and butter. This is the time of the year to the go time. So
you got that right. Roger Long, first time on here. What is your pod theme? The pod theme is all things Tampa Bay sports and beyond. So our guy Greg Wolf is definitely filling us in on all of that. Been very fortunate to be able to do some of the pre-shows for the live block party events over at the Tampa Tap Room across from Amalie Arena.
My boy.
The first one that we did was JJ Moser, now Connor Geeky, there with the Coburn, who we had on the program earlier today. I didn't even ask him about the block party because we were getting into so many different things. What is it like been working with Kobe doing the block party, but especially the live ones with the live studio audience and getting to know some of these new bolts?
Yeah, it's been exceptional. I would say, that's the one thing that I felt as the host of the Lightning. That's the one thing I felt was missing in all of the years I've been with the team now in my 18th season was the connection to the players, right? Because my job has always been to engage with the fans and be the voice of our fans and do all the stuff in the arena and watch parties and all of that stuff. But that was it's all fan engagement, right? It's not really with the team because the guys are on the ice when I'm doing my job. So I've never really had that engagement with our players, our coaches, and our staff like that. So when the opportunity came to take over the block party with Kobe, I was beyond excited about it to really now finally have that chance to be able to finally get to know these players on a personal level. And so I've taken it seriously, and I've been fascinated by the stories, the backstories of how these guys got from their journey as kids to the NHL level. And it's been there's been amazing stories that we've learned, some really funny ones, some really disgusting ones. But it's been very entertaining to say the least. And Kobe is a consummate professional. I think we've seen his development off the ice now, doing stuff with the Lightning organization, doing stuff with FanDuel Sports, formerly Bally with Paul Kennedy, and he's filling in on broadcast, and he's doing radio now as well in the play-by-play. So he has taken it upon himself to better his vernacular and better his broadcast abilities and skills. And it's been awesome to watch, man. He's really a student. He's always trying to educate himself and better himself. And what can I do, to make, himself more intelligent? I mean, the dude is really, really smart and he's been fun to work with. I think we really have been having a good time. I think we're getting better too. Obviously it takes a little while, as you know, Jay, when you have a cohort, a co-host, those timing elements of when I'm going to pick it up and when I'm going to chime in, and again, working over time and getting the continuity with somebody like that, it takes time, but I think we've kind of got it down now. We're really rounding into our third season, and doing the live shows. Like you said, that was an element I think that was missing with the show. And with having a great partner like Highlight now giving us the opportunity to use the tap room and have those intimate conversations, I think our fans have absolutely been loving it, to the point where as soon as they put the announcement out that the Block Party Live tickets goes on sale, they sell out immediately because people want to be in the room and be able to talk to their players and see them in that off the ice kind of environment. So Connor Geeky was exceptional. He's been the most recent live show. We do one every single month. But I think he surprised a lot of people with how open and candid he was and how funny his personality. I really can see Connor Geeky being here for a really long time. I mean, the kid is really making an impression with our fan base.
Yeah, and he's playing freaking awesome on the ice as well. He's a guy that plays wise beyond his years. Who is one guy that you haven't gotten a chance to interview yet that you would like to?
There's actually a few, and they're on the list for the block party. I know we've had a few guys that have been, back-to-backers and seasons that have been on. I have yet to sit down with Sorelli. I've yet to sit down with Chernak. I've yet to sit down with McDonough. Yet to sit down with Vazzy, Lilleberg. We've obviously got a lot of the new guys on this season. I can't really give away who's going to be on the show this coming Wednesday, but he's one of the names that hasn't been on the show and I did not name, so you can kind of maybe figure that one out.
Wow, Kucherov, awesome.
So, I mean, okay, can I put this out there? Okay, please, let's talk about Kucherov.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
So trust me, fans, all right? We have heard your requests for years now to get Kucherov on the show, and we all know he is the least engaged when it comes to media and comes to interviews because that's just not right. That's just not in his nature, right? We saw the real Cooch, though, during the Stanley Cup celebration, right? The number one bullshit. We saw it all. We saw the Bud Light. We saw it. And that, I think, is what has enamored our fan base is we want to see more and hear from that Cooch, right? And so the only way that it's going to happen, I'm just going to be real with you. Kobe and I have talked, trust me, Breezeman, we've all talked about it. And Kobe, being the former teammate, has to be the one that kind of guides that conversation, number one. But number two, he's the one that's got to make that sell. And he has talked to Kucherov, and Kucherov told him before this season even began was, and I will quote, when we win cup, I come on show. Okay, now, fair enough. We need to win the cup, right? Right. The Bud Lights.
And you also need a bunch of these too.
Right.
Buddy.
So I'll be honest. Right. I agree. Right. But I honestly was like, listen, I don't think that interview, if and when it does happen, should be the standard podcast interview.
No.
Right. It needs to be in Kucherov's environment, whether that means we do it at his house on his couch where he's in his comfort zone, or do we get out on a boat with Captain Mike and it's him and Vazzy and myself and Kobe, and we're just out to go fishing, and there happens to be a conversation that takes place during all of that. We've got Mikey and Gabe out there with camera. Like, it's going to have to be one of those kind of situations, I think,
right,
for him to come on the show. And that's cool. We respect, who Kucherov is as a player. When he is so laser focused on his season and his game to where he is not deviating from that to the point where we're like, well, let's get him before the season starts, right? No, if he's already in training camp mode or he's already,
there's no before the season for Kuch.
There's not. Jay, you nailed it. He is constantly 24/7 in season mode. And even when the off season happened, why do you think guys like Nick Paul, these guys stayed back and didn't travel last summer? They stayed here to stay on the ice and work with Kucherov. And I think that speaks volumes to how much respect he has, but how much of a player, how amazing of a player he is. It speaks volumes. So we respect it. Trust me, fans. We have tried and we will continue to try. And I'm never going to say it's not going to happen. Let's win the cup and make it impossible for him to say no. Let's just say that.
Greg, if you could interview a person again that you've already interviewed in your entire career, who would it be and why?
Like a hockey player, or just like anybody?
Any person that you've already interviewed once, you've already hung out with once, celebrity style. Who would that one person be?
Holy crap, that's a tough question, dude.
Great question. This is what happens on the Jay Recher podcast, bro.
Wow.
Because we're going back to the hip hop days, going sports days.
Dude. Like, man, I will say the one person I would probably like to talk to again, because this is the one time I remember being starstruck, and it was over a phone line. It wasn't even like in person. Was Janet Jackson. And it was just, so Janet was on the phone in an interview with Allie, that girl who came on before me when I was on Wild. She was the midday girl. I was the night show. And so I think Janet was coming to town for a show, and she was on the phone. I happened to be in the studio because I was waiting for my show to start. And so she was doing the interview, and somehow she brought me into the conversation, and she was enamored by my radio DJ name, which
At
I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. So she was enamored by that. And I was literally blushing. I'm like, I know. And Allie's like, dude, you're blushing right now. And like, just that she was so soft-spoken and like the massive, huge superstar. And it was just this genuine reaction, conversation that I wish it could have continued. And it never did. And that was the end of it. And that was the end of that. So I know that probably surprises a lot of people. But
no, it's a great answer.
I would love to sit down and have a one-on-one conversation with Janet Jackson, just because I think now, looking back at all of the stuff she's been through her whole life, her brother, everything, she would be an exceptional interview. Now, if you want to go sports athletes, I'll be honest with you, one of the best conversations I've had, it was also on the block party with Kobe, was with Stammer. He was exceptional. And I remember that show went well over an hour, which we're very conscientious of our players' time, and we try to keep it 30, 35 minutes and in and out. But the fact that he was so candid and open about everything, and, I wanted to know personal things about how much pressure we put on him with the Scene Stamkos campaign. And, because I was such a part of that, it just was, it felt like a more personal conversation that I was having with him, knowing that everybody else was having the conversation, but it was just so good. And he's such a good person. And just, that was one, I would love to sit down with him again for sure, and just chat more, because again, I think everything he's been through, and he would just be another person that I would love to sit down and talk to more.
Well, hopefully one day he's back in the Tampa Bay area with his family when his playing career is done. And then we'll have plenty of time to talk with Steven.
Sure that, man.
The one and only Greg Wolf, TBL, Street Laced. If you're at an event and he's not there, you're probably at the wrong event. Greg, I appreciate you, brother. I'll see you, probably talk to you later on this week. Thanks for your time, man. Talk to you soon.
Man. Thanks, Jay.
You got it, pal. The one and only Greg Wolf, one of the voices of Tampa Bay. Yeah, awesome dude all the way around. A big thank you to everybody who joined us on the program today, including Ian Beckles, Braydon Coburn, Michael Kelly, David Schiele, and Greg Wolf himself. Guys and gals, please, please, please continue the love and support. I appreciate everybody out there for all that you do. Support local businesses, support local media. We got to do this together here in the Tampa Bay area. Follow me at Recher, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. I am everywhere. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you tell a friend, tell a family member, tell somebody that you work with. Recher is here to stay 5 days a week starting in 2025. Again, no show on Friday. Back at it a week from today, live from my parents' house in New York. It is the top 20 sports stars of Tampa Bay who will make number one. All right, that's going to wrap it up for me. I'm going to go cut this baby up and get ready for softball tonight. We'll see you next time right here on the Recher Podcast.